Emily Carter threw herself across her baby sister's body with both arms spread wide and screamed raw and ragged at the woman with the clipboard. "You are not taking her. She is 3 years old. She doesn't even know where she is." The woman in the gray dress didn't blink. "Step aside, miss. This is a legal court placement." Emily didn't move. Her heart slammed against her ribs like a trapped bird, and the dust from the livestock pavilion floor gritted against her palms where she pressed them flat. The smell of hay and cattle and the sour sweat of 100 frightened bodies filled her lungs. She could feel Lily trembling against her back, small fingers twisted into the fabric of Emily's only good dress, the one that had been handed down 3 times before it reached her. From the very back of the crowded fairground arena, a tall man in a dust-caked hat pushed through the silence and said low and even, "Nobody's taking anybody. Not today." Before we go any further into Emily's story, I want to ask you something from the bottom of my heart. If you believe a child should never be thrown away, hit that subscribe button right now and tell me what city you're watching from today. Because what you're about to hear is a story that dug itself out of the dirt with nothing but love and grit. And I want to know exactly how far it travels. Now stay with me, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about family. The Hargrove County Summer Placement Fair was what the state of Texas called an opportunity. That was the word they used in the official letters. Opportunity, printed in clean black type on cream-colored county stationery, as though what happened inside the livestock pavilion on those sweltering August afternoons was something children ought to be grateful for. Emily Carter had been to 2 of them before, and she knew exactly what they were. They were cattle auctions with different merchandise. She kept one arm around Lily the entire morning. Lily, 3 years old, with copper hair that curled at the ends like question marks, and eyes so wide and dark they seemed to take up half her face, hadn't spoken a single word since they'd arrived. She pressed her cheek against Emily's ribs and kept her fingers locked around Emily's wrist, like a small, determined animal that had decided with great certainty that it was not going to let go. Emily had made her a promise that morning, whispered it while braiding Lily's hair in the cramped bathroom of the group home, both of them sitting on the cold tile floor before the sun came up. "Nobody's splitting us up. You hear me? Nobody. I don't care what they say. I don't care what papers they show me. You and me, that's it. That's the deal." Lily had nodded very seriously, the way 3-year-olds do when they understand the gravity of something, even if they can't name it. Emily was 12 years old. She had been in the system for 4 years. She had learned early, the way children in her situation learn most things, which is through being hurt, that promises made by adults were made of smoke. They dissolved the moment something more convenient came along. The only promise that had ever held was the one she made to herself the night their mother didn't come home and the neighbor called the county line. I will not lose her. The pavilion smelled like hay and machine oil, and the particular kind of desperation that collects in institutional spaces. Folding chairs lined the walls. Social workers with lanyards and clipboards moved between the families who had come to browse and the children who stood in clusters and tried not to look like they knew what was happening. But they knew. They always knew. Emily watched a boy of about 7 get led away by a couple in matching polo shirts. He looked back twice. Nobody looked back at him. She pulled Lily tighter. "You're squishing me," Lily said quietly. "Good," Emily said. "Stay squished." The county caseworker assigned to them, a thin woman named Mrs. Pruitt, who smelled like menthol cigarettes and wore her reading glasses on a chain around her neck, appeared at Emily's elbow with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Now, Emily, I need you to be cooperative today. We have some very nice families here, good homes, stable situations. Are any of them willing to take both of us?" Emily asked. She had learned not to waste time. Mrs. Pruitt's smile thinned. "That's a more complicated conversation. It's a yes or no question, ma'am, because last time you told me there were families willing to take siblings, and then you separated me from my cousin Danny anyway. So I'm asking you directly, yes or no?" Mrs. Pruitt looked uncomfortable. "We have several families interested in Lily specifically. She's very young, very placeable. And there are some options for girls your age, but not together." The pause was its own answer. Emily's jaw set. She pulled Lily closer. The Hendersons found them 40 minutes later. They were the kind of couple who announced their wealth through the careful subtlety of people who had always had it. Good shoes, good posture, a confidence in the way they moved through the crowd that suggested the world had always arranged itself around them, rather than the other way around. The woman, Patricia Henderson, had silver blonde hair pulled back smooth and a smile like a department store catalog. Her husband, Frank, had the handshake of a man who owned things. Patricia crouched down in front of Lily immediately, which was the wrong move because Lily buried her face against Emily's side so fast she nearly knocked them both sideways. "Oh, she's precious," Patricia said to Emily, rather than to Lily. "How old?" "3, Emily said flatly. "And you're her sister." Patricia stood, exchanging a look with her husband. Then she turned to Mrs. Pruitt, who had materialized behind them like a paper shadow. "She's exactly what we discussed. But we really only have room for—" "I know," Mrs. Pruitt said very quietly. Something cold moved through Emily's chest. "We could offer the older girl a placement referral," Frank said, still pleasant, still looking at Lily. "There are programs for children her age, good ones." Emily said, "I'm standing right here." Frank glanced at her, slightly surprised, as though a piece of furniture had spoken. "Of course. She is not going anywhere without me," Emily said. Her voice was completely steady. She had practiced keeping it steady. She had learned that when you were 12 and small, and your whole life fit in a garbage bag, the only currency you had was a voice that didn't shake. "We are a family. You take us both, or you don't take either of us." Patricia Henderson's smile went gentle and pitying. "Sweetheart, sometimes what we want and what's best for everyone aren't the same thing." "Don't call me sweetheart." "Emily," Mrs. Pruitt's voice held a warning. "She's 3 years old." Emily's voice climbed, not because she lost control of it, but because she made a decision. She does not know these people. She does not know this place. She woke up crying at 4 in the morning because she thought she was alone. She cannot go with strangers without me. She will not understand. She will think I left her. She will think she did something wrong. She is 3. "Emily, lower your voice." "I will not lower my voice." She was crying now, and she hated it. Hated the way tears made adults dismiss you. Hated the hot slide of them down her face. But she couldn't stop. She put both arms around Lily and faced the crowd that had gone quiet around them. "Somebody, please. She's my sister. She's only 3. Please don't take her from me. Please. She's all I have left. We're all each other has. Please." Lily, who had kept very still through all of it, pressed her small face against Emily's neck and began to cry too. The silent, breathless kind that children cry when they're so frightened they can't make sound. The crowd was very still. The Hendersons took a step back. Mrs. Pruitt reached for Emily's arm. And then a voice from the back of the pavilion said clearly, without heat, without hurry, "That's enough." It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The crowd parted, the way crowds do when someone moves through them with absolute, unhurried purpose. Not pushing, not demanding, just walking as though he had somewhere to be and intended to get there. He was tall, lean in the way that comes from actual labor rather than a gym. His jaw looked like it had been cut from something hard and left to weather. His hat was dark and dusty. His boots were older than the building they were standing in. He had the hands of a man who worked with them. He stopped in front of Mrs. Pruitt, and he looked at her with gray eyes that were neither unkind nor particularly warm, just level. The kind of eyes that had seen enough to stop being surprised by much. "What exactly is the plan here?" he said. Mrs. Pruitt straightened. "Sir, this is a county placement proceeding. If you're not a registered—" "I'm registered. Name's Caleb Dawson. I've been on your list for 8 months. He pulled a folded paper from his shirt pocket and held it out without looking at it, still watching her face. "Single household, working ranch background, cleared home inspection passed. I believe that's everything you asked for." Mrs. Pruitt took the paper, looked at it. Her expression shifted slightly. "Mr. Dawson, we appreciate your interest, but we have families here with 2-parent households, more resources." "I didn't ask what you appreciated," he said, not rude, just factual. "I asked what the plan is. Because from where I'm standing, The plan appears to be separating a 12-year-old from a 3-year-old who is currently terrified, and I'd like to understand the reasoning. The reasoning is the best interest of the child. Which child? The question landed in the silence like a stone in still water. Mr. Dawson, which child's best interest? He said again, and his voice was patient, deliberate, like a man who had asked a question and genuinely intended to wait for the answer. Because it sounds like you've decided the best interest of the younger one is a nice house and 2 parents, and the older one can figure herself out. Am I reading that wrong? Nobody answered. He looked down at Emily for the first time. His eyes went to Lily first, took in the white-knuckled grip, the silent crying, the way the little girl had made herself as small as possible. And something moved across his face quickly, like a shadow. Then he looked at Emily. You her sister? Emily wiped her face with the back of her hand. Yes, sir. She got anybody else? Emily's throat worked. No, sir, just me. He nodded once, like that settled something. He turned back to Mrs. Pruitt. I'll take them both. The caseworker blinked. Mr. Dawson, that's not both, he said again. That's my application. Take it or leave it. But if you're going to stand there and tell me the state of Texas is going to split up 2 little girls because nobody wants the inconvenience of taking the older one, then I want to talk to someone above your pay grade. And I will stand here all afternoon to do it. The silence stretched. Patricia Henderson touched her husband's arm. They stepped back further, then further still, and then they were gone, absorbed back into the crowd as quietly as they had come. Mrs. Pruitt looked at the paper in her hand, looked at Caleb, looked at Emily and Lily. She sighed the long-suffering sigh of a bureaucrat who has just realized the path of least resistance runs in an inconvenient direction. There will be a provisional period, she said. 60 days. Home visits. Full compliance with county requirements. I know what provisional means. And you understand that a working ranch presents certain liability concerns for children of this age. I'll manage the liability. Mr. Dawson. Ma'am? His voice was quiet and final. Are we done here, or is there something else you need from me? Another long pause. We'll need to complete the transfer paperwork, Mrs. Pruitt said. Caleb reached over to the folding table beside them, picked up a pen, and set it down in front of her. Then let's get started. Emily stood very still. Lily had gone quiet, still pressed against her, but her crying had slowed. One small hand reached out from Emily's side, cautious as a bird, and touched the edge of Caleb's sleeve. He looked down. Lily was looking up at him with those enormous dark eyes. He didn't say anything. He didn't crouch down or make a fuss or do any of the things adults did when they were performing gentleness for an audience. He just met her gaze steady and unhurried, and let her look. After a moment, Lily tucked her hand back against Emily's ribs, but she had stopped shaking. The drive to the Dawson Ranch took 40 minutes on county roads that went from paved to packed dirt to something that felt more like suggestion than road. Emily sat in the back of Caleb's truck with Lily asleep across her lap, the little girl finally worn down to unconsciousness by the exhaustion of being afraid. Emily watched the land flatten out and go golden in the late afternoon light. She didn't trust it. She had learned not to trust anything that looked peaceful, because peace, in her experience, was just the quiet before something broke. She watched Caleb's hands on the wheel. He hadn't said much since they left, hadn't tried to make conversation or fill the silence with reassurances. Emily appreciated that more than she could have explained. She was tired of reassurances. She had heard so many of them from so many different adults, and not one of them had ever held. "How big is your ranch?" she said finally. His eyes went to the rearview mirror. "Big enough to keep you busy." "Are there other kids there?" "No." "Are there other adults?" A pause. "My neighbor Hector comes around sometimes. Helps with the cattle." "Is it just you?" "It's just me," Emily said. "Why?" He looked at the road. "Why what?" "Why do you live by yourself?" A long silence, the kind that isn't uncomfortable so much as considered. "Lost some people," he said. "A while back." Emily looked at the back of his head. She thought about asking more. She decided against it. She understood the sentence completely. "We're not going to be any trouble," she said. "I want you to know that. I can cook, I can clean, I can work. Whatever you need on the ranch, I'll learn. We won't cost you more than we're worth." The truck slowed. He looked at her in the rearview mirror, and his expression did something she couldn't quite read. "You don't owe me anything. I know that's what adults say. I mean it." "I know that's what adults say too," Emily said. He didn't argue with her. He just nodded very slightly and looked back at the road. That was the moment Emily decided she didn't entirely hate him. The ranch house wasn't what she expected. She had braced herself for a shack, or something falling apart at the seams, the kind of place that matched the picture she had assembled of a lonely man with no particular reason to maintain things. But the house was sound, if worn, with a porch that wrapped around the front and windows that let in the long evening light. He had put a quilt on the bed in the spare room. It was folded down at the corner, the way hotel beds are turned down, which meant he had done it on purpose, which meant he had thought about them before they arrived. Emily noticed that. She put it away somewhere carefully. Lily woke up when Emily carried her inside and immediately went rigid, her eyes scanning the unfamiliar walls. She was 2 breaths away from screaming. "Hey!" Emily kept her voice low and even, the way she always did. "Hey, Lilybug. I got you. Look at me. I got you." Lily grabbed her collar with both fists. "Are we staying?" "Yes. Together." "Together." Lily considered this with the extreme seriousness of a 3-year-old weighing a business proposition. Then she put her head back down on Emily's shoulder. Caleb appeared in the doorway. He had taken off his hat, which made him look different, younger somehow, and less certain. "There's food if you're hungry," he said. "Nothing fancy. Beef stew, biscuits." Emily opened her mouth to say, "We're fine," because she always said they were fine, because it was safer to need nothing. And then Lily said, small and immediate and heartbreakingly honest, "I'm hungry." Caleb almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. "Come on then," he said, and disappeared back toward the kitchen. Emily followed him with Lily on her hip, and she thought, not for the first time in her life and not for the last, don't get used to this. Don't let yourself get used to this. But Lily was already reaching toward the kitchen smell with both hands, and Emily's stomach was hollow, and the house was warm, and for 8 minutes, while they sat at the kitchen table eating beef stew by lamplight, with Caleb sitting across from them, and asking Lily very seriously whether she preferred biscuits with or without butter. Lily's verdict, both. Emily forgot to be afraid. 8 minutes. She would think about those 8 minutes for a long time afterward, because that was the evening that Margaret Vance, director of Hargrove County Child Services, opened a file on her desk with the name Dawson. Caleb printed on the tab and began writing notes in her careful, precise handwriting about a single man on an isolated ranch and 2 children who deserved, in her official opinion, better than what the county had just allowed. And because that was also the evening that 2 women in town, neither of them bad people exactly, just the kind of people who fill silence with speculation, stood in the parking lot of the Dairy Queen on Route 9 and said to each other what the whole town would be saying by morning. "Did you hear about Caleb Dawson taking in those 2 little girls from the placement fair by himself on that old ranch? You have to wonder why." Emily didn't know any of that yet. She was sitting at a kitchen table watching her sister butter a biscuit with extreme concentration. And for the first time in 4 years, she was not watching the door. She would learn to watch it again soon enough, but tonight, just tonight, she let herself eat. The next morning came the way mornings do on a working ranch, without ceremony and without mercy. Before the sun had fully cleared the ridge, Caleb was already moving through the house, boots on the floor, coffee boiling, the particular sounds of a man who had lived alone long enough that his routines had calcified into ritual. Emily was already awake. She had been awake for an hour, sitting on the edge of the bed with Lily curled against the pillow, watching the light change under the door and listening to the house breathe. She did this every time she was somewhere new. She learned the sounds of a place before she trusted it. The creak of the 3rd floorboard, the way the pipes knocked when the water ran, the direction a door opened, the things that could tell you in the dark whether someone was coming. She heard Caleb stop outside their door, a pause, then quietly, "There's eggs if you want them." He didn't knock. He didn't open the door. Just left the words in the wood grain and moved on. Emily sat with that for a moment. Then she got up. Lily ate 4 scrambled eggs and half a piece of toast, and then looked at the remaining half like she was considering her options. Caleb slid the other half of his own toast onto her plate without a word. Lily accepted this with the gravity of a small queen receiving tribute. "She always eat like that?" he asked Emily. "When there's food," Emily said. The sentence came out flatter than she intended. Caleb looked at his coffee cup. "Right," he said. He didn't push it. He didn't explain himself or fill the space with something sentimental. He just drank his coffee and let the morning exist around them. That was the first thing Emily noted about Caleb Dawson. He did not perform kindness. He just did things, put food on plates, left the bathroom light on all night without being asked, hung their 2 small bags, the garbage bags from the county, which she had been quietly humiliated by, on actual hooks in the hallway, as though they were real luggage belonging to real people who intended to stay. Small things. She watched all of them. She didn't let herself feel them yet, she just watched. It was on the 3rd day that Lily stopped eating. Not dramatically, not all at once. She just got quieter at mealtimes, pushing food around the plate, her eyes fixed on something nobody else could see. Emily knew the look. She had seen it before in the months after their mother didn't come back, when Lily had been too young to understand absence, but old enough to feel it like a wound in the center of everything. "She does this sometimes," Emily told Caleb that evening, low enough that Lily, sitting near the window, couldn't hear. "It's not the food. She just goes somewhere else for a while. She'll come back." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Does she have something from where she was? Something she kept with her?" Emily thought about it. "She had a stuffed rabbit. We lost it in the last transfer." He nodded, didn't say anything. The next morning there was a small stuffed horse on the kitchen table when Lily came down. Not a rabbit, clearly. He hadn't been able to find a rabbit. But a brown horse with a yarn mane and a serious, pleasant face. The kind of thing you found at a drugstore, new tag still on it. Lily stopped in the doorway. She looked at the horse. She looked at Caleb, who was at the stove with his back to her, deliberately not watching. She walked to the table, picked up the horse, and held it against her chest. She didn't say thank you. She was 3. But for the first time in 4 days, she ate breakfast without being coaxed. Emily watched Caleb not react to this, watched him keep his back to the table, keep turning eggs in the pan, keep his expression exactly the same, and she felt something shift in her chest. Something she didn't have a name for yet. Something she was immediately suspicious of. She put it away. She was good at putting things away. The trouble with the town started as trouble often does. Before Emily was aware, it had begun. She found out the way she found out most things, by listening when adults believed she wasn't. She was in the feed store with Caleb on the 5th day, standing in the aisle with Lily on her hip while he talked to the man at the counter, when she heard 2 women in the next aisle speaking in the particular register people use when they want to be overheard but still want plausible deniability. "That's them," one said. "The girls from the placement fair." "Mm-hmm. Can you imagine a single man out there on that property with 2 little ones? Nobody out there to see what goes on. I heard he's been alone since the accident. They say he went strange after." "Strange how?" "Just strange. Closed off. You know how he is. I know he used to be different before." A pause. Then, "I'm just saying I'd want someone checking on those children." Emily held Lily tighter. Lily looked up at her face and read it the way children read the people they love, instinctively and accurately. "Emmy," she said quietly. "I got you," Emily said. She looked toward Caleb at the counter. He was paying for a bag of feed, his hat brim low, his expression unreadable. She couldn't tell if he'd heard. She thought he probably had. She thought he was probably used to it. On the drive home, she said, "People in town are talking about you." "I know. Doesn't it bother you?" He was quiet long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, "Bothered me more before I stopped being surprised by it." "What do they say normally, before us?" Another pause. "That I'm not right since the accident. That a man who lives out there by himself must have something wrong with him." He glanced at the mirror. "They're not entirely incorrect." Emily looked at his profile. "What happened in the accident?" The truck was very quiet. "My wife," he said finally, "and my boy." 3 years ago. He said it the way people say things they have said so many times that the words have worn smooth, lost their edges, become bearable through repetition, even though the thing itself has not. Drunk driver came through a crossing on the county road. Clara and James. She was 31, he was 6. The silence that followed was the kind Emily knew better than to fill. After a long moment she said, "I'm sorry." "So am I," he said. That was all. But something passed between them in the truck on that county road, some recognition, some mutual acknowledgement of the specific weight that comes from losing the person who was supposed to be your family. And Emily didn't put it away. She let it sit. She thought that might be the first honest thing she had allowed herself since they arrived. The first visit from Margaret Vance came on a Tuesday, 9 days after they'd arrived. Emily heard the car from the porch where she was sitting with Lily, and she knew before the woman got out of it that this was not a friendly call. There was something in the way the car sat, official, deliberate, angled slightly toward the road like it hadn't fully committed to being there, that she recognized from 4 years of experience. The woman was in her 50s, with the posture of someone who had long ago decided that good posture was a form of argument. Gray suit jacket, sensible shoes, a clipboard that she carried like it had weight beyond its actual weight. She introduced herself to Caleb on the porch. "Margaret Vance, County Child Services. I'm the Placement Oversight Director for this district." She looked past him at Emily and Lily with a practiced professional expression that gave nothing away. "This is a routine compliance visit. I'll need to see the living situation, speak with Mr. Dawson privately, and then spend a few minutes with the children." Caleb said, "You're welcome to all of it." Emily watched her walk inside. Lily tugged her sleeve. "Who is that lady?" "Someone from the county," Emily said. Lily thought about this. "Is she going to take us?" "No," Emily said. And then, because she was 12 and Lily was 3, and 3-year-olds believe what they're told with a totality that 12-year-olds have long since lost. "No, she's not." She believed it when she said it. She wanted to believe it. She stopped believing that when she heard, through the kitchen window where she was sitting near, Margaret Vance say to Caleb in a low, clipped voice, "I'll be direct with you, Mr. Dawson. This placement was rushed through under unusual circumstances, and I have significant concerns about its suitability. A single adult male, no co-parent, an isolated rural property, no immediate support network. The younger child has documented trauma response. The older child has a history of behavioral incidents in prior placements." Emily went very still. Caleb's voice was measured. "What kind of behavioral incidents?" "Defiance, conflict with authority figures, refusal to comply with placement protocols." She was protecting her sister. "Be that as it may. I'm not arguing with your characterization, ma'am. I'm explaining it. That child has been trying to hold her family together for 4 years inside a system that keeps trying to take it apart. What you're calling defiance, most people would call devotion." A silence. "I'm not here to debate the child's character," Vance said. "I'm here to assess the placement. And I want to be transparent with you. I will be making a recommendation to the court within the next 30 days. I would encourage you not to allow the children to become overly attached in the interim." Emily heard Caleb set something down on the counter, slowly, deliberately. "With respect, Ms. Vance," he said, and his voice had gone very quiet and very even in the way that Emily was beginning to understand meant he was choosing each word with precision. "I'd encourage you to remember that those children are people, not placements. And the moment you start managing their capacity for attachment to protect your paperwork, you've forgotten which direction your job is supposed to point." Another silence, longer this time. "I'll be in touch," Vance said. "I'll be here," Caleb said. Emily was off the porch before the front door opened, pulling Lily with her around the side of the house, her heart slamming against her sternum. She pressed her back against the wall and held Lily close and listened to Vance's car start and pull out of the drive. 30 days. She had said 30 days. Emily had not survived 4 years in the system by misunderstanding timelines. She found Caleb in the kitchen. He was standing at the window watching the dust cloud Vance's car had left on the county road, and he didn't turn around when Emily came in. "I heard," Emily said. "I figured. She's going to try to move us." He turned around. His face was set, but his eyes weren't angry. They were something more complicated than angry. Something that looked more like a man who has just understood the shape of a problem and is already working through it. "She's going to try," he said. "That's not the same thing as succeeding." "No," he said, "it's not." Emily's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the kitchen table. "So what do we do?" Caleb looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, forearms on the table, and he looked at her the way she had never been looked at by an adult in this context. Stayed on, without softening, without the vague, reassuring noises people made when they didn't want to deal with the reality a child was handing them. "We do this right," he said. "We follow every rule, every visit, every requirement. We give them nothing to use. And if they use it anyway, then we get a lawyer." Emily blinked. "We?" Something shifted on his face. "We," he said simply, and didn't look away. The words sat between them on the kitchen table like something solid. Emily looked down at the wood grain, swallowed. "People are talking in town," she said. "About you, about why you took us in. They're saying things. I know what they're saying. It could make things harder for the court." "Probably." "Then why did you—" She looked up at him. "You didn't know us. You didn't owe us anything. Why did you step in?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because nobody else was going to." "That's not a reason." "It's the only reason I've ever needed for anything," he said. Emily stared at him. She had met adults who helped because it made them feel good about themselves. Adults who helped because they wanted something in return. Adults who helped the way people perform charity, with an audience, with paperwork, with a quiet expectation of gratitude. She had learned to identify all of them. She had learned to protect herself from all of them. She could not find any of those things in Caleb Dawson's face. What she found instead was a man who was tired and still showing up anyway. A man who understood something about loss that she recognized from the inside. A man who had put a stuffed horse on a kitchen table for a little girl he didn't know because she was sad, and he could do something about it, and so he did. She didn't cry. She had cried enough in the last 2 weeks to last her a year, but something in her chest unclenched, just slightly, just enough. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he said. Lily appeared in the doorway with her stuffed horse, looked at both of them with enormous dark eyes, and said with great authority, "His name is Button." Caleb looked at the horse. "Good name." "I know," Lily said, and walked back out. Emily almost smiled. It was the closest she'd come in longer than she could remember. She shut it down fast, out of habit. But it had been there, a flicker, an ember, and she noticed it the way you notice something returning that you thought was gone for good. Outside, the sun was dropping toward the ridge. Somewhere on the other side of the property, a horse moved in the paddock. The county road was empty, and the dust had settled, and the ranch was quiet in the way that felt tentatively, cautiously, like a place where something might possibly be all right. 3 miles away, Margaret Vance was sitting at her desk, writing the first of what would become many notes in Caleb Dawson's file. And in the hardware store on Main Street, 2 men who had known Caleb for 20 years were telling a third man who hadn't that there was something off about the whole situation, something that didn't add up. Something that a man in that state of grief had no business getting himself into. The third man listened. He nodded. He said he'd heard the same thing. By morning, the whole town had heard it too. The morning after Margaret Vance's visit came cold and gray, with a wind that carried the smell of rain from the south. Emily found Caleb in the barn before the sun was fully up, forking hay into the stalls, with the methodical rhythm of a man who had done this so many times. His body moved without needing his mind to direct it. She stood in the doorway for a moment, watching. The barn smelled of dry alfalfa and horse sweat, and the particular earthy warmth that collected in enclosed spaces where animals breathed and slept. A roan mare turned her head and looked at Emily with the calm, patient curiosity of creatures that had never learned to be suspicious. Caleb didn't look up. "You're up early?" "Couldn't sleep." He drove the pitchfork into the hay bale and leaned on it. "Vance? Part of it?" Emily stepped inside, wrapping her arms around herself. The morning air had teeth. "I keep thinking about what she said. 30 days. That's not a lot of time." "No," he said. "It isn't." "What are we supposed to do with it?" He considered the question. Then he pulled the pitchfork free and tossed another forkful into the stall. "Same thing we do with 30 years. One day at a time. Feed the stock. Fix what's broken. Keep showing up." He looked at her. "You know how to ride?" Emily blinked at the shift. "What? Ride a horse. You know how?" "No." "Then that's what we do today." He hung the pitchfork on the wall and walked past her toward the tack room. "Can't run a ranch if you can't ride. And you said you wanted to learn whatever needed doing." Emily stood in the barn aisle, caught between confusion and something that felt dangerously like hope. She had been bracing for a conversation about the hearing, about strategies and contingencies, and the looming weight of the county's authority. Instead, he was offering her a lesson, a normal thing, the kind of thing a parent might do with a child on an ordinary day. She followed him. The mare's name was Daisy, and she was 17 years old with a gentle eye and a swayback that spoke to decades of faithful service. Caleb saddled her while Emily watched, explaining each step without making it feel like a lecture. The cinch, the bridle, the way to check the girth so it wouldn't slip. He moved with the unhurried competence of someone who had done this work for so long that it had become part of his bones. "You're not afraid of her, are you?" he asked. Emily looked at Daisy's patient face. "No." "Good. Animals can smell fear. Makes them nervous." He held the reins out to her. "Mount up." She put her foot in the stirrup and hauled herself into the saddle with more enthusiasm than grace. The mare shifted, and Emily grabbed the horn with both hands, heart hammering. Caleb didn't laugh. He just adjusted the stirrup length and showed her how to hold the reins loose, how to sit deep in the saddle, how to use her weight instead of her hands to guide the horse. They walked the fence line for an hour. The sun burned through the morning gray, and the land opened up around them, golden and wide and empty in a way that felt less like loneliness and more like possibility. Emily learned that if she relaxed her grip, Daisy responded better, that the horse could feel tension through the saddle, that she had to trust the animal beneath her, and that trust was a thing you built, not a thing you decided. She thought about how that applied to other things, too. Lily was waiting on the porch when they got back, button clutched in one hand and a look of deep betrayal on her small face. "You went without me." "We went to check fences," Emily said, swinging down from the saddle with legs that felt like jelly. "Boring stuff." "You wouldn't have liked it. I would have liked it." "Next time," Caleb said, lifting her off the porch steps and setting her on the ground. "We'll get you a pony." Lily's eyes went wide. "A real pony? When you're a little bigger." "How big?" "Big enough to reach the stirrups." Lily looked down at her own legs as if measuring them against an invisible standard, then nodded with fierce determination. She would grow. She would reach the stirrups. She had a goal now. Emily watched this exchange from the corner of her eye, and she felt that dangerous thing shift in her chest again. She pushed it down. She was getting better at pushing it down, but it was getting harder. Hector arrived that afternoon. Emily heard the truck before she saw it, the rumble of an old engine and the crunch of gravel. She came around the side of the house to find a stocky man with silver-streaked black hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from weathered mesquite. He was pulling a heavy toolbox from the bed of his truck, and he stopped when he saw her. "You must be Emily." His voice was rough, but his eyes were kind. "I'm Hector. I work the north pasture with Caleb." "Heard he finally got some help around here." Emily wasn't sure how to respond, so she just said, "Yes, sir." Hector snorted. "Sir, I like that. Ain't been called sir in 20 years. He hefted the toolbox. "I'm here to fix the fence in the south paddock. Caleb said you might want to learn." She did. The afternoon passed in the slow, rhythmic work of post-hole digging and wire stretching. Hector talked while they worked, telling her stories about the ranch, about the drought 2 years back, about the time a bull got loose and ended up in the mayor's front yard. He did not ask about her past. He did not mention the placement fair or the whispers in town. He just treated her like a person who was there to do a job, and that was so ordinary and so welcome that Emily felt the knot in her shoulders loosen a fraction. By the time the sun started dropping, she was exhausted, dirty, and happier than she had been in months. She didn't realize that until she caught herself smiling at something Hector said, and she had to stop and examine the feeling like an unfamiliar object. "You got a good hand with her," Hector said to Caleb later when Emily was inside getting water. She heard it through the open kitchen window. "The older one, she's got grit." "She's got more than grit," Caleb said. "She's got a 4-year head start on taking care of someone else. That's not grit, that's survival." "Same thing most days." Hector paused. "Town's talking." "I know. You know they're talking or you know what they're saying?" "Both." Hector was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You need me to talk to anyone, you let me know." "I appreciate that." "I mean it, Caleb. You did a good thing. Ain't nothing wrong with a good thing." Emily stood at the kitchen window with the glass of water in her hand and let those words settle. She didn't know Hector well. She had known him for 3 hours. But he had called what Caleb did a good thing, and he had said it like he meant it, and that mattered more than she wanted to admit. The next few days fell into a rhythm. Mornings with Daisy, learning to ride. Afternoons with Hector or Caleb, learning the work of the ranch. Evenings at the kitchen table, the three of them eating whatever Caleb put in front of them, Lily chattering about Button's adventures, Caleb asking Emily questions about her day that he actually waited for her to answer. She caught herself relaxing into it. She caught herself looking forward to the evenings. She also caught herself watching the road. Every time a car appeared in the distance, her stomach tightened. Every time the phone rang, she froze. She knew Margaret Vance was out there, writing her reports, building her case. She knew the 30 days were counting down. She couldn't forget it, not even in the good moments, and the good moments made it worse because they gave her something to lose. On the 6th day after Vance's visit, Emily went into town with Caleb to pick up supplies. She had asked to go. She told herself it was because she wanted to see the place, to understand the layout of the community they were supposed to be part of. But really, she wanted to test something. She wanted to see if the town's whispers would turn into something she could face directly. The hardware store was quiet when they walked in. A man at the counter looked up, nodded at Caleb, and went back to his paperwork. Emily stayed close to Caleb's side, watching the aisles. She saw a woman in a floral dress near the back, and the woman's eyes slid over them with the particular blankness of someone who was pretending not to stare. They got what they needed: flour, nails, a new length of rope. Caleb paid at the counter, and the man, his name was Frank according to the embroidered patch on his shirt, handled the transaction without saying anything beyond the necessary words. Emily felt the chill in the air. It wasn't hostility exactly. It was distance, the kind of distance people create when they've decided you don't belong. As they walked out, Emily saw a group of 3 women standing by the feed store next door. They were talking, and when they saw Caleb and Emily, the talk stopped. Not gradually, all at once. The silence was louder than anything they could have said. Emily kept walking. She held her head straight. She did not look at them. But in the truck on the way home, she said, "They hate us." Caleb glanced at her. "They don't hate you. They don't know you. They hate the idea of us." He was quiet for a moment. "People are scared of what they don't understand. And they're scared of anything that reminds them that life doesn't go the way they planned. A man who lost his family taking in 2 strangers' children," he shook his head. "That doesn't fit the story they've told themselves about me. So they have to make it fit somewhere else, even if it means making it ugly. Doesn't that make you angry?" "It used to." He looked at the road. "Anger's a fire that burns whatever you feed it to. I fed it for 2 years. It didn't change anything except me." He paused. "I'm not saying I don't feel it. I'm saying I don't let it drive." Emily thought about that. She thought about the anger she carried, the hot coil of it that had kept her going through 4 years of the system. It had been useful. It had been fuel. But it was also exhausting, and she was tired in ways that went deeper than sleep. "How do you stop it from driving?" she asked. "You find something else to drive toward." She looked out the window at the land sliding past. The something else. She didn't know what that was yet. But she thought she might be starting to see the shape of it. 2 days later, the letter came. Emily saw the county car from the window. It was not Margaret Vance's car. It was a different one, a dusty sedan with a county seal on the door. A man in a suit got out, walked to the porch, and knocked. Caleb answered. Emily stood at the top of the stairs, Lily in her arms, and watched. The man handed over an envelope. "Official notice of hearing," he said. You'll want to read it." Caleb took it. He didn't open it until the car had pulled away. Then he stood on the porch and read, his face unreadable, the paper held loosely in his hands like it was something fragile or something dangerous. She couldn't tell which. "What does it say?" Emily asked. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Caleb looked up. "The hearing is set for the 22nd. That's 11 days from now." He paused. "Vance has filed a motion for temporary separation of the children, pending the outcome." The words hit Emily like a physical blow. She set Lily down, put a hand on the wall to steady herself. "Temporary separation," she repeated. "What does that mean?" "It means she wants Lily placed in a separate home during the evaluation period." "No." The word came out flat. "No. I'm not going to let that happen. You can't stop it." Her voice was rising now, cracking at the edges. "You can't. They have papers. They have rules. They have judges who listen to them and not to us. You can't stop it." Caleb stepped toward her. "Emily." "Don't." She backed away. Her hands were shaking. "Don't promise me something you can't keep. I've heard promises. I've heard so many promises. Every single one of them broke. Every single time." She was crying now, and she hated it. She hated the tears, hated the weakness of them, hated that she couldn't control this one thing when she had controlled everything else for so long. "They're going to take her," she said. "They're going to take her, and I'm going to be alone again, and she's going to be scared, and she's going to think I left her. She's going to think I gave up." Caleb didn't try to hug her. He didn't try to soothe her with empty words. He just stood there, 3 feet away, and let her cry. And when she was done, when the tears had slowed and she was wiping her face with the back of her hand, he said, "You done?" She nodded. "Good. Now listen." His voice was low and steady. "I am going to fight this. I have already called Ruth Calloway. She's the best family lawyer in the county. She's going to be here tomorrow to talk to us about what we can do. I have 11 days to build a case, and I am going to use every single one of them. But I need you with me. I need you to keep doing what you've been doing, taking care of your sister, learning the ranch, showing up, because the best argument we have is what's happening in this house, and if we fall apart, they win." Emily looked at him. Her chest was still heaving, but something in his words had caught hold. She had spent 4 years fighting alone. She had never had an adult stand beside her and say, "We." 11 days, she said. 11 days. "What do we do until then?" "We live." He held up the letter. "We do what we've been doing. We get up in the morning. We do the work. We eat dinner together. We prove to anyone who's watching that this is a family." She looked at the letter in his hand. Then she looked past him, through the open door, at Lily sitting on the kitchen floor, talking to Button in a serious whisper, arranging a row of pebbles in front of the stuffed horse. "Okay," she said. 11 days. She didn't believe it would be enough. She had learned not to believe in enough. But she believed in Caleb Dawson, and that was new, and she held on to it the way a drowning person holds on to anything that floats. The next morning, Ruth Calloway arrived. She was a woman of about 40, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner that Emily recognized and respected immediately. She sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a cup of coffee that she drank black, and she asked questions that made Emily think. "Tell me about your mother," Ruth said. Emily tensed. "What about her? When did she leave? How? Was there abuse? Neglect? What's the official record?" Emily gave her the facts. The drinking, the disappearances, the last time, when she didn't come back at all. She told it flatly, the way you tell a story you've told so many times that the edges have worn smooth. Ruth wrote it all down. "And the placements before this one?" Emily went through them. The foster home that had seemed nice until the father started looking at her wrong. The group home where they'd separated her from her cousin. The short-term placement that had lasted 3 days before the family changed their minds. She kept her voice even. Ruth's pen never stopped. When Emily finished, Ruth sat back and looked at her notes. Then she looked at Emily. "You've been through a lot," she said, "more than any kid should have to go through. And you've come out the other side still fighting for your sister. That counts for something. Does it count in court?" "It can." Ruth tapped her pen on the pad. "Here's the problem. Vance is going to argue that a single grieving man on an isolated ranch is not a suitable placement for two children with trauma histories, particularly given the community concerns. She has documentation from the incident at the placement fair, your outburst, which she'll characterize as instability. She has testimony from people in town who have expressed concerns. And she has the fact that you left the property during the storm, which she'll argue shows a lack of supervision. "I left because I was scared," Emily said. "I know." And that's a reasonable response given your history. But the court will see a 12-year-old taking a 3-year-old into a storm in the middle of the night. That's going to be hard to explain away. Caleb spoke for the first time. "What do you recommend?" Ruth looked at him. "I recommend we present a united front. I recommend we bring character witnesses, people who know you, who can speak to your character. I recommend we make sure the children are in school, that they're healthy, that they're thriving. And I recommend you let me handle Vance in the courtroom. And the separation order? I'll file a motion to oppose it. We'll argue that the children are bonded, that separation would cause significant psychological harm, and that the placement is stable." She paused. "But I need to be honest with you. It's going to be an uphill fight. The system is designed to err on the side of caution. And caution, in this case, looks like separating the children pending a full evaluation." Emily felt the floor drop out from under her. She gripped the edge of the table. "But there's a chance," Ruth said quickly. "A real chance. Especially if we can show that the concerns about Caleb are unfounded. That the town's gossip is just gossip. That this is a safe, loving home." "How do we show that?" Emily asked. Ruth smiled, and it was not a warm smile, but it was a determined one. "We show them the truth, and we make sure they can't look away." The days that followed were a blur of preparation. Ruth came twice more, drilling Emily on questions she might be asked, coaching her on how to answer without anger, without fear. Caleb spent hours on the phone, lining up witnesses. Hector agreed to testify. The schoolteacher, Mrs. Adler, who had met Emily once when she came to check on their enrollment, volunteered to speak on the children's behalf. Even the man from the hardware store, the one who had been cool to them in the aisle, called Caleb one evening and said he would be willing to say that Caleb had been a decent man for 20 years and that the gossip was just gossip. Emily didn't understand that. She didn't understand how people could talk about you behind your back and then stand up for you in public. But Caleb explained it to her one night on the porch. "People are complicated," he said. "They get caught up in the current of what everyone else is saying. It's easier to go along than to push back. But when it counts, when they have to look themselves in the mirror, a lot of them choose to do the right thing. Why didn't they do the right thing sooner? Because it's easier not to. Because standing up means taking a risk. It means being the one who gets talked about next." He looked at the stars. "It takes courage to be the first one to stand." Emily thought about the placement fair. She thought about the crowd parting, about the man in the dusty hat walking forward when no one else would. "You were the first one to stand," she said. He didn't answer, but he didn't deny it either. The night before the hearing, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay in bed with Lily curled beside her, listening to the wind move through the eaves, counting the hours until morning. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the courtroom. She saw Margaret Vance with her clipboard. She saw a judge looking at her with sympathy and helplessness. She saw Lily being led away. Around 3 in the morning, she got up. She walked through the dark house to the kitchen and found Caleb sitting at the table with a cup of cold coffee in front of him and the hearing notice spread out under his hand. "Couldn't sleep either," he said. She sat down across from him. "What if it's not enough? Then we keep fighting." "How?" He looked at her. In the dim light, his face was all shadows and lines, but his eyes were clear. "There's always another door," he said. "It might not be the door you wanted. It might be smaller, harder to get through. But there's always a door. You just have to be willing to look for it." Emily stared at the table. "I'm tired of looking for doors." "I know." His voice was quiet. "I'm tired too. But we're looking together now. That's different, isn't it?" She looked up. His hand was on the table, palm open. She put her hand in his. "Yeah," she said. "It's different. They sat like that until the first gray light of dawn crept through the window, two people holding on to each other in the dark, waiting for the day that would decide everything. The morning of the hearing arrived with a sky the color of old pewter and a wind that smelled like rain that had not yet decided to fall. Emily woke before the sun, her eyes snapping open in the dark, with the particular alertness of someone who has been waiting for a terrible thing and knows the hour has come. Lily was still asleep beside her, one small hand curled around Button's yarn mane, her face slack and peaceful, in a way that hurt to look at because it would not stay that way for long. Emily lay still and counted the cracks in the ceiling. She had done this in every place she had ever slept. Learned the geography of the room above her head, so that when she woke disoriented, she could find herself by the patterns of wear and damage. This ceiling had a long crack that ran from the corner to the light fixture, splitting like a river on a map. She knew it by heart now. She knew the sound the window made when the wind came from the north. She knew the way the floorboards creaked outside the door when Caleb walked past in the dark. She knew the smell of the house, hay and coffee, and the faint sweetness of the soap Caleb used. She knew all of it, and she had let herself know it. And that was the trap she had walked into with her eyes open. She got up without waking Lily. She dressed in the clothes she had laid out the night before, the best she had. A blue dress that had belonged to someone else before it belonged to her, faded at the elbows and patched at the hem. She had pressed it under the mattress overnight, the only way she knew to get the wrinkles out. She pulled her hair back tight and looked at herself in the small mirror by the window. The girl who looked back had dark circles, and a jaw set hard as stone, and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything a courtroom could throw at her. Caleb was in the kitchen. He had made coffee and eggs and biscuits, and he had set 3 plates on the table, even though none of them had any appetite. He looked at her when she came in, and she saw him take in the dress, the hair, the set of her shoulders. He did not say anything about it. He just pulled out her chair and said, "Eat something. It's going to be a long day." She sat. She ate 2 bites of biscuit and drank half a glass of water. It was more than she thought she could manage. Lily came down a few minutes later, rubbing her eyes and dragging Button by the leg. She was still in her nightgown, and she looked at the plates with suspicion. "Are we having breakfast now?" "We are," Caleb said. "Then why is Emmy's plate still full?" Emily looked at her sister. The question was so simple, so observant, so exactly the kind of thing Lily would notice, that something cracked open in her chest. She took another bite. "I'm eating now." Lily nodded, satisfied, and climbed into her chair. She ate her eggs with the concentration of a small general planning a campaign. She did not know what day this was. She did not know that in a few hours, people in suits would argue about whether she would stay in the only home she had ever known that felt safe. She only knew that breakfast was happening and she was hungry, and that was the entire world. Emily wanted to protect that ignorance. She wanted to build a wall around it so high that nothing could climb over it. But she knew she could not. And the knowing sat in her stomach like a stone. Ruth Calloway arrived at 7:30. She was dressed in a dark skirt and jacket, and she carried a briefcase that looked heavy with papers. She did not sit down. She stood in the doorway and looked at all 3 of them, and she said, "We're as ready as we're going to be. The hearing is at 9. We should leave by 8. Emily nodded. She put on the shoes that were too big for her, handed down from a girl she had never met. She buttoned her dress with fingers that did not shake because she had taught them not to. She took Lily's hand, and she walked out to the truck. The drive took 40 minutes. The sky stayed gray. The land stretched on either side, flat and golden, and dotted with cattle that did not know or care what was happening in the courthouse. Lily fell asleep in the back seat, her head against Emily's shoulder. Caleb drove with both hands on the wheel, his eyes on the road, saying nothing. Emily watched the county line pass. She thought about how she had crossed it 4 years ago, in the back of a social worker's car, holding a garbage bag full of clothes that were not hers. She had not known then what she was heading toward. She had known only what she was leaving behind. And now she was crossing it again, toward a room where strangers would decide if she could keep the only thing that mattered. The courthouse was a brick building with tall windows and a flag that hung limp in the still air. They parked and walked up the steps, and Emily felt the weight of the building press down on her. Inside, it smelled like floor wax and old paper, and the particular kind of tension that collects in places where important things are decided. There were benches in the hallway, and people sitting on them. Some of them she recognized. Hector was there, in a clean shirt with his hat in his hands. Mrs. Adler sat upright, a book open in her lap that she was not reading. The hardware store man, whose name Emily did not know, was leaning against the wall, and he nodded at Caleb as they passed. The courtroom was smaller than Emily had expected. Wood-paneled walls, a raised desk for the judge, 2 tables facing it. The gallery had 4 rows of benches, and they were filling up. Emily saw the woman from the feed store. She saw the 2 men who had been talking in the hardware store. She saw faces she did not know and faces she wished she did not recognize. Margaret Vance was already at one of the tables, her papers arranged in precise stacks, her clipboard at her elbow. She looked up when they entered, and her eyes met Emily's for just a moment. Emily could not read what was in them. She did not try. Caleb put his hand on her shoulder and guided her to the other table. Ruth was already there, pulling papers from her briefcase. Lily, still half asleep, climbed onto the bench and leaned against Emily's side. They sat down, and the waiting began. The judge entered at 9 o'clock exactly. She was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair cut short and reading glasses perched on her nose. Her robe was plain, and she moved with the economy of someone who had been doing this work for decades and had stopped being impressed by any of it. She sat down, arranged her papers, and looked out at the courtroom with eyes that were sharp and patient. "This is the matter of the placement of Emily Rose Carter and Lily Marie Carter," she said. "Ms. Vance, you may proceed." Margaret Vance stood. She presented her case with the methodical thoroughness of someone who had rehearsed every word. She laid out the history, the mother's abandonment, the previous placements that had failed. The incident at the placement fair, which she described as a child exhibiting defiance and uncontrolled behavior. The decision to place both children with a single adult male with no co-parent and no formal child care training. The concerns raised by members of the community. The incident of the storm, when Emily had taken Lily and fled the property in dangerous conditions, resulting in the younger child's illness. She spoke for 20 minutes. Every word was measured, professional, damning. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The facts she chose to present painted a picture that was tidy and alarming. Emily listened to it all. She watched her own life being turned into evidence, her fear and desperation reframed as instability, her love for her sister reframed as a liability. She wanted to stand up and scream. She wanted to explain every single moment, every reason, every sleepless night of the past 4 years. But she had learned the hard way that screaming did not change anything. So she sat still, and she held Lily's hand, and she waited. Ruth stood to cross-examine. She was calm, deliberate, and she did not attack. She asked Vance about the timeline. She asked about the notice that had been slipped under the door. She asked whether Emily had been given any prior warning about the proposed separation. Vance's answers became shorter. Her certainty became less certain. "So," Ruth said, "a 12-year-old child, with a documented history of trauma and a record of protecting her younger sibling, receives an official notice informing her that her sister may be removed. She has no one to explain it to her, no one to reassure her. She does what any child with her history would do. She panics. She tries to protect her sister in the only way she knows how. And you are characterizing that as evidence of an unstable environment?" Vance's jaw tightened. The action itself was dangerous. The child could have been seriously harmed. The younger child was seriously harmed. She developed a fever that required medical attention. And Mr. Dawson went after them, did he not? He did. In the middle of the storm, on horseback. He found them in an abandoned barn, brought them home, and stayed up through the night to care for them. Yes. So the response to the crisis was immediate, responsible, and effective. The child who panicked was found. The younger child was treated. Everyone came home safe. Vance did not answer for a moment. Then she said, "The fact remains that the placement was not stable enough to prevent the crisis in the first place." Ruth nodded, as if considering that. She sat down. Judge Hale looked at Caleb. "Mr. Dawson, would you like to address the court?" Caleb stood. He was not a man who talked easily. Emily could see it in the way he gathered himself, the way he looked at his hands before he spoke. But when he raised his head, his voice was steady. "Your Honor, I'm not a man who knows much about the law. I know about cattle and fences and what it takes to keep a ranch running. I know about loss." He paused. "I know what it feels like to have your whole world taken from you in a moment. And I know what it feels like to be given a second chance you never asked for and don't deserve." He looked at Emily, then at Lily. "I didn't plan on this. I didn't go to that placement fair looking for children. I went because I'd been on the list for 8 months and I thought maybe it was time to stop hiding from the world. And then I saw that little girl with her arms around her sister, screaming for someone to help her, and I couldn't walk away. I don't know if that makes me qualified. I don't know if there's a test I can pass. But I know that in the weeks they've been with me, I have not missed a single meal. I have not missed a single night of sleep in the chair by their door when one of them had a bad dream. I have not once made them feel like they were a burden." He stopped. The courtroom was quiet. "Your Honor, I lost my wife and my son 3 years ago. I thought that was the end of my family. I thought I would spend the rest of my life alone on that ranch, just going through the motions. And then these two walked into my life, and I found out I was wrong. I found out there was still something left to build." His voice cracked, just slightly. "Please don't take them away." Emily was crying. She had not realized when it started. The tears were running down her face, silent and unstoppable. She did not wipe them away. Judge Hale looked at Caleb. She looked at Emily. She looked at Lily, who had button pressed against her chest, and was watching the judge with the solemn, unblinking attention of a child who understood that this was important, even if she did not know why. "Emily," the judge said, "would you like to say anything?" Emily stood. Her legs felt hollow, but they held her. She walked to the front of the room, to the small chair beside the judge's bench, and she sat. She looked at Judge Hale, and she said the words she had been holding inside her for 4 years. "I've been in the system since I was 8. I've been in 6 placements. I've been separated from everyone I ever loved. My mother didn't come back. My cousin Danny was sent to a different state. The only person I have left is Lily, and I have spent every single day of the last 4 years making sure she was fed and clean and not too scared to sleep. I know I'm 12. I know I'm not an adult, but I'm the only adult she's ever had. And Mr. Dawson, Caleb, he's the first person who has ever looked at both of us and said yes. Not yes to one of us, yes to both." She took a breath. Her voice shook, but she kept going. "I didn't leave that night because he wasn't taking care of us. I left because I got a piece of paper that said they were going to take her, and I panicked. I made a mistake. But he came after us. He found us. He carried her home. He stayed up all night when she had a fever. He put a stuffed horse on the table for her because she was sad. He's not the problem. The system is the problem. The system that keeps telling me I have to trust it and then breaks every promise it makes." She stopped. The room was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. Judge Hale looked at her for a long moment. Then she said, "Thank you, Emily. You may step down." Emily walked back to her seat. Lily reached for her hand and held it tight. Judge Hale looked at Vance. "Ms. Vance, do you have any further evidence or testimony?" Vance looked at her papers. She looked at Emily. She looked at Caleb. Something passed across her face, a flicker of doubt, or recognition, or something else that Emily could not name. "No, Your Honor," she said. Judge Hale nodded. She took off her glasses and cleaned them slowly, deliberately. Then she put them back on and looked at the courtroom. "I have been a judge in this county for 23 years. I have seen a great many placement hearings. I have seen children passed from home to home like packages that no one quite knows what to do with. I have seen good intentions and bad outcomes. And I have seen occasionally something that looks like the right thing happening despite all the obstacles." She paused. "This is one of those occasions. The concerns raised by Ms. Vance are not without merit. A single adult male, a grieving man, an isolated property, these are reasonable things to question. But the evidence before me does not support the argument that this placement is harmful. The evidence before me shows 2 children who are thriving, who are bonded to their caretaker, who have found stability and safety for the first time in years." She looked at Caleb. "Mr. Dawson, you are not a perfect man. Neither am I. Neither is anyone in this room. But you are a good man, and this court recognizes that. The motion for temporary separation is denied. The placement is confirmed. And I would like to begin the process of formalizing this arrangement." Emily heard the words, but they did not land all at once. They came in fragments. Denied. Confirmed. Formalizing. She pressed her hand over her mouth, and for a long moment she could not breathe. Lily tugged her sleeve. "Emmy? We get to stay," Emily whispered. Lily looked at her, then at Caleb, then back at Emily. She did not seem surprised. She had never believed they would leave. "Okay," she said. "Can we get a dog now?" Outside the courthouse, the sky had broken open. Sunlight poured through the clouds in long golden shafts, lighting the square like a painting. The crowd spilled out of the building, and people Emily did not know came up to Caleb and shook his hand and said things she could not hear. Hector caught her eye and nodded, once, with the kind of respect that did not need words. Ruth Calloway stood on the steps with her briefcase, and she was smiling, not professionally, truly smiling. "You did good in there," she said to Emily. "Both of you." Emily looked up at her. "Is it really over?" "The hearing is over. There will be more steps, paperwork, a waiting period, home visits. But the hard part is done. The judge made her decision, and she's not going to change her mind." Emily let that settle. The hard part was done. She had heard those words before, in different contexts, and they had always been lies. But this time, she believed them. This time, she had evidence. Caleb came up beside her. He had Lily in his arms, and the little girl was holding Button up to the sunlight, examining him as if seeing him for the first time. "You ready to go home?" Caleb asked. Emily looked at the courthouse. She looked at the people still standing in small groups on the steps. She looked at the sky, which had turned from pewter to gold. "Yeah," she said. "Let's go home." They walked to the truck. The drive back was quiet, but it was not the tense quiet of the morning. It was the quiet of exhaustion settling into relief, of fear finally releasing its grip. Lily fell asleep again, and Emily let her head rest against the window and watched the land go by. The ranch appeared in the distance, the house small and solid against the wide sky. Emily looked at it, and she understood that she was looking at home. Not a temporary placement, not a pause between losses. Home. Caleb pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. He sat for a moment looking at the house, and then he said, "I'm going to put the adoption papers through as soon as I can." Emily looked at him. "That means you're stuck with us," she said. He almost smiled. "I guess I am." She got out of the truck. She stood in the yard with the sun on her face and the wind in her hair, and she let herself feel everything she had been holding back. She let the fear go. She let the hope in. And for the first time in 4 years, she believed that she was going to be okay. The morning after the hearing came soft and quiet, the way mornings do when the worst has passed and the world is catching its breath. Emily woke to the sound of birds outside the window and the weight of Lily's head on her arm, and for a long moment she lay still, testing the shape of this new reality. The fear that had lived in her chest for 4 years was still there, but it had shrunk. It was no longer the size of a fist around her heart. It was something smaller, something she could breathe around. She slipped out of bed and walked to the window. The sun was just clearing the ridge, painting the land in shades of amber and gold. The horses were moving in the paddock. A hawk circled high above, riding the thermals. Everything looked the same as it had the day before, but everything felt different. Caleb was at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a stack of papers. He looked up when she came in, and his face did the thing it did sometimes, the thing where the lines around his eyes softened and his mouth relaxed, and he looked almost like a different person, lighter. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep any longer." He pushed a plate of biscuits toward her. "Eat. We've got a big day." She sat down. "What are we doing?" "Ruth is coming by at 10 to start the adoption paperwork, and I thought we might take a ride this afternoon. Show you the north pasture." Emily picked up a biscuit. She did not ask why he was doing this. She did not ask if he was sure. She just ate the biscuit and let the morning happen around her. Lily came down a few minutes later, still in her nightdress, button tucked under one arm. She climbed into Emily's lap without a word and put her head on Emily's shoulder. The three of them sat in the kitchen as the sun climbed higher, and the quiet was not the quiet of waiting for something to break. It was the quiet of a family finding its footing. Ruth arrived at 10 o'clock exactly. She had a briefcase full of forms and a smile that looked more relaxed than it had the day before. She spread the papers across the kitchen table and walked Emily and Caleb through each one. Emily signed her name where she was told to sign. She read the words that said she was petitioning to be adopted, and she felt the weight of them settle into something solid. "The waiting period is 6 months," Ruth said. "There will be more home visits, more interviews. But the judge has signaled her approval, and that carries a lot of weight. Barring something unexpected, this will go through." "What kind of unexpected?" Emily asked. Ruth looked at her. "Nothing I anticipate. The county has closed its file. Vance has moved on to other cases. You've done the hard part." Emily looked at the paper in front of her. Her name, Caleb's name, Lily's name. They were all on the same page, connected by the words "petition for adoption." She had never seen her name on anything that wasn't a placement order before. "Okay," she said. "What happens now?" "Now you live your life. You go to school. You help with the ranch. You let time do what time does." Ruth packed her briefcase. "And in 6 months you come back to the courthouse and we make it official." After Ruth left, Emily stood on the porch and looked out at the land. She thought about the next 6 months. She thought about school, which she had not attended consistently in 3 years. She thought about the other children she would meet, the questions they would ask. She thought about the town, which had watched the hearing and was still deciding what to make of them. Caleb came out and stood beside her. "Nervous?" "A little. That's normal." She looked at him. "Were you nervous when you decided to take us?" He was quiet for a moment. "I was terrified. I hadn't been around children since James. I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't know if I would look at you and see what I lost." "Do you?" He turned to face her. "No. I look at you and Lily, and I see what I found." Emily did not know what to say to that, so she said nothing. She just stood beside him on the porch and watched the land stretch out in front of them, and she let the words settle into the place where she kept the things she was afraid to believe. The first week after the hearing passed in a blur of ordinary days. Emily started school on Monday, walking the 2 miles to the county road where the bus picked her up. The other children looked at her with the curiosity that children reserve for newcomers, but no one was cruel. By the 3rd day, a girl named Martha had offered to share her lunch. By the 5th day, Emily had been invited to sit with a group of girls at recess. She did not tell them about her past. She did not tell them about the placement fair, or the hearing, or the years of group homes. She just sat with them and listened and let herself be ordinary. It felt strange and good. In the afternoons, she came home to the ranch. She helped Caleb with the chores, learning the rhythms of the land. She learned to milk the goat, a stubborn creature named Pearl who tolerated no mistakes. She learned to split wood, though her arms burned after the first 20 minutes. She learned the names of the cattle and which ones were due to calve in the spring. And in the evenings, they sat together on the porch. Lily would play with Button in the dirt, narrating elaborate adventures that involved imaginary rivers and mountains. Caleb would smoke his pipe and watch the sun go down. Emily would sit on the step and feel the cool air on her face, and think about how different this was from anything she had known. On the 10th day after the hearing, Margaret Vance came back. Emily saw the car from the window and felt her stomach drop. She had thought it was over. She had let herself believe. And now the county car was pulling into the driveway, and Vance was getting out, and Emily's hands went cold. But Vance was not in her gray suit jacket. She was wearing a cardigan and carrying a small paper bag instead of a clipboard. She walked to the porch and stopped when she saw Emily standing in the doorway. "I'm not here officially," Vance said. Emily did not move. "Then why are you here?" Vance looked at the bag in her hands. "I brought something, for the little one." Caleb appeared behind Emily. He put a hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. "Come on in," he said. Vance stepped inside. She looked around the kitchen, at the dishes drying by the sink, at Lily's drawings taped to the wall, at the small stuffed horse sitting on the counter. Her expression was hard to read. She set the bag on the table. "It's a rabbit." "I heard she lost one." Emily stared at the bag. She did not know what to do with this. This woman had tried to take Lily away. This woman had written reports and filed motions, and made the case that they should be separated. And now she was standing in their kitchen with a stuffed rabbit. "Why?" Emily asked. Vance looked at her. "Because I was wrong. And I don't know how to fix that, but I can do this." She left before anyone could say anything else. The door closed behind her, and the house was quiet. Lily came in from the back room. "Who was that?" "Nobody," Emily said. She picked up the bag and handed it to Lily. "Someone left this for you." Lily looked inside. Her eyes went wide. She pulled out a soft brown rabbit with floppy ears and a stitched smile. She held it for a moment, then looked up at Emily. "Button has a friend now," she said. Emily knelt down and hugged her sister. She did not know if she could forgive Margaret Vance. But she could accept a stuffed rabbit, and she could let her sister have this small kindness, and that was enough for now. The weeks settled into months. The autumn turned the land gold and red, and the air grew crisp with the promise of winter. Emily learned to ride well enough to help Caleb move the cattle from the high pasture. She learned to mend fences and drive the truck along the dirt roads. She learned to read the weather in the clouds and the behavior of the animals. And she learned to trust. It happened in small ways, almost without her noticing. She stopped checking the door before she went to sleep. She stopped counting the exits in every room. She stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. The fear was still there, buried deep, but it no longer ran her life. One evening in late November, she found Caleb in the barn, sitting on a bale of hay with his head in his hands. She almost turned away. She almost gave him the privacy she assumed he wanted. But something made her stay. "You okay?" she asked. He looked up. His eyes were red, but his face was composed. "Yeah, just thinking." She sat down on the hay beside him. "About what?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Clara used to sit with me in this barn, when we were first married. We didn't have much then, just the land and each other. She used to say that the barn was where she felt closest to God." Emily did not know what to say. She had never heard him talk about his wife like this. She sat still and waited. "I didn't think I would ever sit in this barn again without feeling like I was drowning," he said. "But tonight, I sat here and I thought about her, and it didn't hurt the same way. It was like remembering instead of bleeding." He looked at her. "That's because of you. And Lily. You gave me something to look forward to again." Emily felt her throat tighten. She wanted to say something, but the words would not come. So she just sat beside him in the barn in the fading light, and she let him have his remembering, and she let herself be part of the something he was looking forward to. Winter came early that year. The first snow fell in the first week of December, blanketing the ranch in white that lasted until Christmas. Lily had never seen snow before. She stood on the porch with her mouth open, catching flakes on her tongue, until Emily had to drag her inside before she turned into an icicle. They put up a tree. Caleb cut it himself, a small pine from the north edge of the property, and they decorated it with strings of popcorn and paper stars that Lily made at the kitchen table. Emily hung a small wooden ornament that she had found in the attic, a carved horse that she suspected had belonged to James. She hung it near the top, where Lily could not reach it, and she said a quiet thank you to a boy she had never met. On Christmas morning, Lily woke them at dawn. She tore through the presents with the enthusiasm of a small hurricane, and her favorite was not the doll or the new dress, but a hand-carved wooden pony that Caleb had made in the workshop, painted brown with a real yarn mane. She named it Button's Horse, and she carried both of them everywhere for a week. Emily's gift from Caleb was a small leather journal with her name embossed on the cover. She opened it and saw the first page was blank, waiting for her to fill it. "For your stories," he said. "Everyone has stories worth keeping." She held the journal against her chest. She had never owned a book with her name on it before. She had never owned anything that was meant to be filled with her own words. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. "You're welcome." Later that night, after Lily was asleep and the fire had burned down to embers, Emily sat at the kitchen table with the journal open in front of her. She picked up a pencil and wrote the first words she had ever written that were not part of a school assignment or a placement form. My name is Emily Rose Carter. I am 12 years old. I live on a ranch in Texas with my sister Lily and a man named Caleb Dawson, who is not our father yet, but will be soon. She stopped. She looked at the words. They were true. All of them were true. She closed the journal and went to bed. The new year came, and with it, the countdown to the adoption hearing. Ruth visited twice more. The home visits passed without incident. The county closed its file. The whispers in town died down, replaced by a grudging acceptance that most people did not voice aloud, but carried in the way they nodded at Caleb in the street, the way the women at the church brought casseroles when they heard about the upcoming adoption. Emily watched it all with a cautious eye. She had been burned too many times to fully trust the world, but she was learning to trust small pieces of it. Hector, Mrs. Adler, the girl Martha who shared her lunch, and Caleb. Always Caleb. The hearing was scheduled for the 15th of June. Emily marked it on the calendar in the kitchen and watched the days pass, one by one. She did not let herself think about what would happen if it fell through. She had learned to hold hope loosely, like a bird you did not want to crush. But as the day approached, the hope grew anyway. It filled the spaces where fear used to live. It made her lightheaded and nervous, and happy in a way she had almost forgotten was possible. The night before the hearing, she could not sleep. She went to the kitchen for water and found Caleb already there, sitting in the dark with a cup of cold coffee. "Same dream?" he asked. "No dream, just couldn't shut my brain off." He slid a chair out. She sat. "Tomorrow's the day," she said. "It is. Are you nervous?" He considered the question. "A little. Not about the hearing, about after." "What after?" He looked at her. "After it's official. After you're stuck with me for good. I want to do it right. I don't want to let you down." Emily looked at the man across the table. She thought about the first time she had seen him, walking through the crowd at the placement fair. She thought about the stuffed horse on the kitchen table. She thought about the night in the barn, when he had held them in the rain. "You won't," she said. "Let me down. You haven't yet." He looked at her for a long moment, then he nodded. "We should try to sleep," he said. "Probably." Neither of them moved. They sat in the dark kitchen, two people who had been given a second chance they did not expect, waiting for the morning that would make it real. The morning of the adoption hearing arrived wrapped in a sky the color of bruised peaches, the sun struggling through layers of cloud that hung low over the ridge. Emily had been awake since 4, lying still in the dark, listening to Lily's soft breathing and the creak of the house settling around them. She had run through the day ahead 100 times in her mind, each time arriving at the same conclusion. This was going to happen. After 6 months of waiting, of home visits and paperwork, and the slow, patient work of becoming a family, it was finally here. She got up before the alarm. She dressed in the same blue dress she had worn to the first hearing, washed and pressed and hanging in the closet like a uniform for important days. She brushed her hair until it lay flat and pulled it back with a ribbon that Caleb had left on her dresser the night before. A simple thing, pale yellow, with no note attached. She held it for a moment before tying it, understanding that he had not said anything because he did not need to. In the kitchen, coffee was already made. Caleb was standing at the stove, turning eggs in a pan, his back to her. He did not turn around when she came in. "Morning," he said. "Morning. You sleep?" "Some." He slid the eggs onto a plate and set it on the table. "Eat. We got a long morning." She sat and ate, though her stomach was tight. The eggs tasted like nothing, but she chewed and swallowed because he had made them and because she knew she would need the strength. Lily came down 20 minutes later, still rubbing her eyes, Button in one hand and the rabbit from Margaret Vance in the other. She had taken to carrying both of them everywhere, a matched set of guardians against the dark. She climbed into her chair and looked at the plate Caleb set in front of her with the suspicion of a small general inspecting the troops. "Is today the court day?" she asked. "It is," Caleb said. "Will there be a judge?" "There will." "Will she say we get to stay?" Caleb looked at Emily, then back at Lily. "She will." Lily nodded, satisfied, and began eating her eggs with the focused determination she brought to all tasks that required fuel. Emily watched her sister and felt the weight of the moment press down on her. 6 months. 183 days since the first hearing. Days of school and ranch work and evenings on the porch. Days of learning what it meant to belong somewhere. Days of watching Caleb soften by imperceptible degrees. Of watching Lily bloom into a child who laughed without checking first to see if it was safe. She had not let herself believe it was real until this morning. But now, with the sun climbing and the coffee warm in her hands, she let the belief in. They left at 8. The drive to the courthouse was quiet, the same road she had traveled 6 months before, but the land looked different now. She knew the turns. She knew the fence posts that marked the boundary of the Dawson property. She knew the place where the creek crossed under the road, where the water ran clear over smooth stones. She knew it all, and it knew her. The courthouse square was busy. People were walking along the sidewalks, carrying bags and briefcases, living their ordinary lives. Emily saw a woman she recognized from the feed store, and the woman smiled at her. A real smile, not the tight-lipped acknowledgement of before. Emily nodded back. They walked up the steps and into the cool dimness of the building. Ruth was waiting inside, dressed in the same dark jacket she had worn to the first hearing. She smiled when she saw them. "You ready?" she asked. Caleb looked at Emily. Emily looked at Lily, who was examining the marble floor with intense interest. "We're ready," Emily said. The courtroom was the same. The wood-paneled walls, the raised bench, the 2 tables facing it. The gallery was emptier this time. Hector was there, in his clean shirt with his hat on his lap. Mrs. Adler sat 2 rows back. A few other faces Emily recognized from town, people who had come to witness the end of a story they had followed from the beginning. Margaret Vance was not there. Her work was done. Judge Hale entered at 9 o'clock, and the room rose and sat again. She looked at the papers in front of her, then at the 3 people standing before her. "This is the matter of the adoption of Emily Rose Carter and Lily Marie Carter by Caleb James Dawson. Mr. Dawson, have you been advised of the legal implications of this proceeding?" "I have, Your Honor." "And you wish to proceed?" "I do." Judge Hale nodded. She asked a series of questions, the standard ones about fitness and stability and understanding of responsibility. Caleb answered each one directly, without hesitation. His voice was steady, but Emily could see the slight tremor in his hand where it rested on the table. Then Judge Hale looked at Emily. "Emily, you are old enough to have a voice in this proceeding. The court wants to hear from you directly. Do you understand what adoption means?" Emily stood. "Yes, Your Honor. It means he becomes our father, legally, permanently." "And is that what you want?" Emily looked at Caleb. He was watching her, his face unreadable, but his eyes were bright. She thought about the placement fair. She thought about the storm. She thought about the stuffed horse and the eggs in the morning, and the way he had sat in the chair by her door when she had nightmares, without ever mentioning it the next day. "Yes," she said. "It's what I want." Judge Hale looked at Lily. "Lily, do you know what's happening today?" Lily looked at the judge with her enormous dark eyes. "We're getting a dad." The courtroom rippled with quiet laughter. Judge Hale smiled. "That's right. And how do you feel about that?" Lily considered the question with the gravity it deserved. "He gives me eggs in the morning, and he made me a pony. That sounds like a good dad." "He is." Judge Hale wrote something on the papers in front of her. Then she looked up. "The adoption of Emily Rose Carter and Lily Marie Carter by Caleb James Dawson is hereby approved. The court clerk will prepare the final decree. Congratulations to all of you." The words hit Emily like a wave. She did not cry. She sat down slowly, her legs suddenly unable to hold her, and she felt Lily climb into her lap and wrap her arms around her neck. "We did it," Lily whispered. "Yeah," Emily said. "We did it." Caleb sat down beside them. He did not say anything. He put one hand on Emily's shoulder and the other on Lily's head, and he sat there, holding them both, while the courtroom emptied around them. Ruth came over and shook his hand. "I'll have the final papers ready by the end of the week." You'll want to keep a copy with your important documents." "Thank you," Caleb said. His voice was rough. Ruth nodded and left. They sat in the courtroom for a long time after everyone else was gone. The light from the tall windows fell across the empty gallery, and the clock on the wall ticked away the minutes of their new life. Finally, Caleb stood. "Come on, let's go home." They walked out of the courthouse into a day that had turned bright and warm. The clouds had burned off, and the sky was a deep, endless blue. Emily stood on the steps and looked at the town square, at the people going about their business, at the flag fluttering in the breeze. She was a Dawson now. She had a legal name that matched the family she had chosen. And then the man stepped out of the crowd. He was not someone she recognized at first, just a figure in a dusty coat, moving against the flow of foot traffic, his eyes fixed on the courthouse steps. He was tall, thin, with graying hair and a face that had seen hard years. He stopped at the bottom of the steps and looked up at them. "Caleb," he said. Caleb went very still. Emily felt it in the sudden tension of his hand on her shoulder. "Earl," Caleb said, and his voice, which had been steady through the entire hearing, cracked on the single syllable. The man climbed the steps slowly. He stopped a few feet away, and his eyes moved from Caleb to Emily to Lily, taking them in with an expression Emily could not read. "I heard about the hearing," the man said. "I came to see if it was true." "It's true," Caleb said. The man nodded. He looked at the girls again, and his mouth worked as if he were trying to find words that kept slipping away. "I'm their grandfather," he said. "Clara's father." The name hit Emily like a splash of cold water. Clara. Caleb's wife, who had died 3 years ago. The woman whose picture hung in the hallway, whose name Caleb spoke with such careful tenderness. Emily had never thought about her family. She had never imagined that Clara's parents might still be out there, might still be part of the world Caleb had lost. Caleb was looking at the man with a mixture of pain and wariness. "Earl, this isn't the time." I know it's not." The man, Earl, ran a hand through his graying hair. "I haven't spoken to you since the funeral. I know I haven't. I couldn't. It was too hard. You understand that, don't you?" "I understand. And then I heard you took in 2 girls, and I thought, well, that's something. That's something I didn't think you'd ever do again." He paused. "And I thought, if you can do that, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can come and say, I'm sorry for the way I treated you, for blaming you. It wasn't your fault. I know it wasn't your fault." The silence stretched. Emily looked at Caleb and she saw something she had never seen before. She saw him struggling. She saw a man who had spent 3 years building walls against grief, and someone had just knocked a stone loose. "Earl," Caleb said, and his voice was softer now. "I never blamed you. I blamed myself. I know. We were both wrong." Lily tugged at Emily's sleeve. "Who is that man?" Emily did not know how to answer. She looked at Caleb, waiting for him to say something. Caleb took a breath. "Lily, this is Mr. Carpenter. He was married to Clara's mother. He's family." Lily looked at Earl with the frank assessment of a child who had learned to judge adults quickly. "Do you have a horse?" Earl blinked. No horse." "You should get one," Lily said, and that seemed to settle the matter for her. Emily felt a laugh bubble up in her chest, unexpected and strange. She swallowed it down. Caleb looked at Earl. "We were just heading home. You want to come? Have some coffee?" Earl hesitated. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding." Caleb's voice was quiet. "Your family. Come home with us." The drive back to the ranch was different from the drive to the courthouse. The weight in the truck was not the weight of fear. It was the weight of something new, something that had not been there before. A grandfather. A connection to the woman Caleb had loved and lost. Emily sat in the back with Lily, watching Earl's truck follow them down the county road. She did not know what this meant. She did not know if this man would stay or go, if he would be part of their lives or just a passing visitor. But she saw the way Caleb's shoulders had eased, the way he held the wheel with a little less tension. And she thought that maybe this was part of what adoption meant. Not just gaining a father, gaining a whole history, a whole network of people who might, slowly and cautiously, become family. They reached the ranch. Earl parked beside the house and got out slowly, looking around at the land with an expression of recognition. "It hasn't changed much," he said. "Some things have," Caleb said. He looked at Emily and Lily. "Come on, let me introduce you properly." They walked into the house. Earl stopped in the doorway and looked at the photographs on the wall. Clara's picture, James's picture, the one from the porch, the three of them, taken just a few months ago. "She would have liked this," Earl said quietly. "Clara, she would have liked seeing you with children again." Caleb nodded. He could not speak. They sat in the kitchen, all four of them, and Caleb made coffee. Emily poured milk for Lily and set out the biscuits left over from breakfast. Earl talked about his farm, about the years since Clara's death, about the loneliness that had driven him to sell most of his land and live in a small house on the edge of town. "I thought about coming sooner," he said, "but I didn't know how. I didn't know if you'd want to see me." "I always wanted to see you," Caleb said. "I just didn't know how to ask." They talked until the afternoon shadows lengthened and the light turned golden. Lily fell asleep on the couch with Button and the rabbit. Emily sat at the table and listened, learning about a woman she had never met, a woman who had loved this ranch and this man, and a boy who had been taken too soon, and she understood that she was not replacing anyone. She was joining something that had been broken and was slowly being mended. She was part of a story that had started long before her and would continue long after. When Earl finally left, he shook Caleb's hand and then pulled him into a brief, rough embrace. "I'll come by again," he said, "if that's all right." "It's more than all right," Caleb said. Earl looked at Emily. "You take care of your father, young lady. He's a good man." "I know," Emily said. Earl drove away, and the dust settled on the road. Emily stood on the porch with Caleb and watched the truck disappear around the bend. "Are you okay?" she asked. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I think I am. For the first time in 3 years, I think I really am." He put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him. They stood together on the porch as the sun dropped toward the ridge, casting long shadows across the land they both belonged to now. The summer after the adoption arrived with a heat that pressed down on the ranch like a living thing, shimmering off the tin roof of the barn and baking the earth into a patchwork of cracks. Emily had never known heat like this. The group homes had been stuffy in the summer, thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and institutional soap, but this was different. This was the heat of open land, of wide skies that went on forever, of a sun that ruled everything it touched. She learned to work in it. Up before dawn, when the air was still cool and the grass was wet with dew. Chores finished by noon, when the heat became unbearable, and even the cattle sought the shade of the cottonwoods along the creek. Afternoons spent on the porch with a book or in the barn with Daisy, brushing her coat and talking to her in a low voice about things she did not say to anyone else. Lily thrived in the heat. She was a creature of constant motion, chasing butterflies through the yard, collecting rocks and sticks and feathers, building elaborate kingdoms for Button and the rabbit in the shade of the porch. She called Caleb Dad now, easily, without hesitation, the way she had always called Emily Emmy. The word had become natural, worn smooth by daily use. Emily watched her sister and felt the slow, steady settling of something she had never allowed herself to feel before. Contentment. It was fragile, and she did not trust it fully, but it was there. Earl came by every Sunday. It became a ritual. He would arrive in his old truck at 10 in the morning, carrying something from his garden, tomatoes, green beans, a jar of honey from the hives he kept behind his house. He would sit on the porch with Caleb and drink coffee, and they would talk about the ranch, about the weather, about the price of beef. Sometimes they talked about Clara. Not with the heavy silence of grief, but with the careful tenderness of people learning to remember without breaking. Emily listened to those conversations. She learned that Clara had been stubborn, that she had argued with Caleb about everything and loved him through all of it. She learned that James had been shy with strangers but fearless on a horse, that he had once tried to ride a bull and ended up with a broken arm and a grin that lasted a week. She learned that grief did not disappear, but it could change shape. It could become something you carried without being crushed by it. One Sunday in late July, Earl brought a photograph. It was old, faded at the edges, showing a young woman in a white dress standing in front of the ranch house, squinting into the sun. "That's Clara," Earl said, handing it to Emily. She was 18 there, just married. Emily looked at the photograph. The woman was smiling, a real smile, not posed. She had dark hair and light eyes, and the kind of face that seemed to hold a laugh just beneath the surface. "She looks happy," Emily said. She was. Earl's voice was quiet. She loved this place, loved the life she built here. Emily looked at the photograph for a long time. She thought about what it meant to build a life. She thought about the woman who had lived in this house before her, who had loved the same man, who had walked the same land. She did not feel like a replacement. She felt like a continuation. "I'll take care of it," she said. "The photograph. I'll keep it safe." Earl nodded. He did not say anything else, but his hand rested on her shoulder for a moment, and that was enough. August came, and with it the county fair. Emily had not wanted to go. The memory of the placement fair was still raw, even after everything that had happened. The smell of hay and livestock, the folding chairs, the clipboards. She did not want to be near any of it. But Caleb had looked at her with that steady, patient gaze and said, "It's different now. You're not the same person who walked into that building, and I'll be with you the whole time." She agreed. She did not want to, but she agreed. They went on a Saturday afternoon, the three of them. Lily was ecstatic, bouncing in the back seat of the truck, pointing at every cow and horse they passed. The fairgrounds were crowded with families, with children running between booths, with the smell of fried food and popcorn hanging in the air. Emily stepped out of the truck and felt her heart hammer. She gripped Caleb's hand without thinking. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," she said. "Just give me a minute." He gave her a minute. He stood beside her, not pushing, not talking, just being there. And after a while, she let go of his hand and walked forward. The fair was different from the placement fair. It was loud and chaotic and full of laughter. Lily dragged them from booth to booth, winning a small stuffed pig at the ring toss, eating cotton candy until her face was sticky, riding the pony cart 3 times in a row. Emily watched her and felt the memory of the other fair recede, becoming smaller, becoming something that belonged to the past. They ran into people from town. Mrs. Adler, who hugged Emily and asked about school. Hector, who was judging the livestock competition and gave Lily a blue ribbon just for showing up. The woman from the feed store, whose name Emily finally learned was Dorothy, who smiled and said how much Lily had grown. It was not forgiveness. It was not a clean slate, but it was something. At the end of the afternoon, as the sun was dropping and the fairground lights were flickering on, Caleb bought them each a lemonade, and they sat on a bench near the livestock pavilion. The same pavilion where everything had started. Emily looked at it. The doors were open, and she could see the rows of folding chairs inside, the same ones, arranged in the same pattern. "I didn't think I'd ever come back here," she said. "I know. I'm glad I did." Caleb nodded. He did not say anything, but he did not need to. Lily, exhausted, was leaning against Emily's side, half asleep, Button and the stuffed pig clutched in her hands. The fairground noise faded around them, and the evening settled into a quiet hum. "Dad?" Lily said, her voice slurred with sleep. "Yeah, baby. Can we come again next year?" Emily felt the word land in her chest. Dad. Lily said it so easily now, like she had been saying it her whole life. Caleb looked at Lily, then at Emily. The corner of his mouth lifted. "We'll come every year if you want." "Okay," Lily said, and she was asleep before the word was finished. They sat on the bench as the stars came out, a family of 3 in the place where they had become one. And Emily let herself be happy. She let herself feel it fully, without reservation, without waiting for the other shoe to drop. She let herself trust that this happiness was real and that it would last. The first day of school came at the end of August. Emily had been attending the county school since the winter, but this year was different. This year, she walked in with a last name that matched the family she went home to. This year, when the teacher called her name from the roster, it was Emily Dawson. She had practiced saying it in front of the mirror. Emily Dawson. It fit like a key in a lock. The year stretched ahead of her, full of unknowns. But for the first time, she faced them without the weight of fear dragging at her heels. The autumn came with cool winds and the turning of the leaves along the creek. The cattle were brought down from the high pasture, and the work of preparing for winter began. Emily learned to drive the tractor, to haul hay, to check the fences for breaks. She grew taller, stronger, her hands calloused from work, her skin browned by the sun. She wrote in her journal every night. Small entries at first, just records of the day. But as the weeks passed, the entries grew longer. She wrote about Lily's laugh. She wrote about the way the light looked at sunset. She wrote about the sound of Caleb's boots on the porch in the morning, and how it meant safety. She wrote about her mother, the good memories, the ones she had tried to bury because they hurt too much. She wrote about the way her mother used to sing off-key while she cooked, and the way she smelled like lavender and something sharp that Emily had not understood then. She wrote about the night her mother did not come home, and she wrote about the forgiveness she was slowly, painfully learning to extend. Not to excuse, not to forget, but to let go. One night in October she came downstairs for water and found Caleb at the kitchen table, a photograph in his hands. She recognized it. It was the one of Clara and James, taken years ago, that usually hung in the hallway. "You okay?" she asked. He looked up. "Yeah, just thinking." She sat down across from him. "About them?" "About him." He tapped the photograph, the boy. "James. He would have been 10 this year. I was thinking about what he would have been like, what kind of man he would have become. It's okay to think about that." "I know." He paused. "I also think about how he would have liked you. You two would have gotten along. He was stubborn, like you." "Like you, you mean?" He almost smiled. "Maybe." She looked at the photograph. The boy was grinning, missing a front tooth, his hair a mess, his eyes full of mischief. She felt a pang of something, not jealousy, but a kind of grief for a person she would never meet. "I wish I could have known them," she said. "Me too," he said, "but I'm glad you know me." She reached across the table and took his hand. They sat like that, in the quiet kitchen, with the photograph between them, two people who had lost so much and found so much more. The first frost came in November, painting the grass white and turning the breath of the cattle into clouds. Lily wore a coat that was too big for her, handed down from someone in town, and she looked like a small, colorful mushroom as she waddled across the yard, collecting frost-covered leaves. Emily was in the barn, mucking out the stalls, when she heard the car. It was not a sound she recognized. She put down the pitchfork and walked to the barn door, wiping her hands on her jeans. A sedan was pulling into the driveway, a blue one she had never seen before. The engine cut, and the door opened. The woman who stepped out was in her 40s, with a tired face and a coat that was too thin for the weather. She looked at the house, at the barn, at Emily standing in the doorway. And then she said, in a voice that Emily had not heard in 5 years, "Emily?" Emily's blood went cold. She knew that voice. She had tried to forget that voice. She had buried it in the deepest part of her, under years of anger and grief and the slow work of moving on. "Mom," she said. The woman's face crumpled. She took a step forward, then stopped, as if she were afraid to come closer. "I know I don't have any right to be here," she said. "I know, but I had to see you. I had to see if you were okay." Emily stood frozen. The pitchfork handle was cold in her hands, the only solid thing in a world that had just tilted off its axis. Lily appeared from around the corner of the house, button in her hand. She stopped when she saw the stranger. "Emmy?" she said. "Who is that?" Emily looked at her sister. Then she looked at the woman who had left them, who had disappeared into the night and never come back, who had set in motion everything that followed. "I don't know," Emily said. "I don't know who she is." The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled tight, ready to snap. Emily stood in the barn doorway with the pitchfork still in her hands, the cold November air cutting through her shirt, and she stared at the woman who had given birth to her and then disappeared into a night that had never quite ended. The woman looked older than Emily remembered. Her face was lined, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes carrying a weight that had not been there before. She looked tired in a way that went deeper than bones. Lily tugged at Emily's sleeve. "Emmy, who is that lady? Why is she crying?" Emily did not take her eyes off the woman. "Go inside, Lily. Go find Dad." "But—" "Go, now." Lily hesitated, then ran toward the house, button bouncing in her grip. The screen door slammed behind her, and the sound seemed to break the spell. The woman took another step forward, her hands outstretched, her face a mask of pleading. "Emily, please. I know I don't deserve to be here. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I've been sober for 2 years. I've been in a program. I got my life together. And I've been looking for you. I had to find you. I had to tell you I'm sorry." Emily's throat was tight. "You're sorry. I'm so sorry. Every day I've thought about you and Lily. Every night I've wondered if you were okay. I know I left you. I know I failed you. But I'm different now. I'm clean. I have a job. I have a place to live. I want to make it right." The words came out in a rush, tumbling over each other, desperate and raw. Emily heard them, but they did not land the way her mother probably hoped they would. They landed like stones in a hollow space, each one raising dust but not filling the hole. "You left us," Emily said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "You left us alone in that apartment. You didn't come back. The neighbor found us. I was 8. Lily was a baby. She didn't even know how to talk yet. She cried for 3 days because she didn't understand where you went." Her mother's face crumpled. "I know. Do you know what happened to us after that? Do you know how many places we lived? How many times I had to hold her while she screamed because she didn't know where she was? Do you know what the placement fare is? Emily, do you know what it feels like to stand in a room full of strangers who are looking at you like you're livestock and have to beg someone to take both of you because you can't bear to lose the only person you have left?" The words were coming faster now, hotter, burning their way out of her chest. She had held them inside for 5 years, and they were finally breaking free. "I was 12 years old, and I had to scream at a woman with a clipboard because she was going to take my sister away from me. I was 12, and I ran into a storm with a 3-year-old because I was so scared of losing her that I would have rather died in a ditch than let them separate us. And you were gone. You were gone, and you didn't come back, and I had to be the mother. I had to be the one who made sure she ate and slept and didn't cry herself to death. I was 8 years old when I became her mother, and I have been her mother every single day since." She stopped. Her breath was ragged. Her hands were shaking. Her mother was crying openly now, tears streaming down her face. I know, and I hate myself for it. I hate myself every day. But I'm here now. I'm here, and I want to try. Please, just let me try." The screen door opened. Caleb stepped out onto the porch, his face unreadable. He looked at Emily, then at the woman, and something shifted in his posture. He came down the steps and walked to Emily's side. "Who is this?" he asked. His voice was calm, but Emily could hear the edge underneath. "My mother," Emily said. The words felt foreign in her mouth. Caleb's jaw tightened. He looked at the woman with a level gaze that held no warmth. "I think you need to leave." "Please," the woman's voice cracked. "I just want to talk to her. I just want a chance." "You had a chance. You had years of chances." Caleb stepped forward, placing himself between Emily and her mother. "You left 2 children alone. You abandoned them. And now you show up on my property unannounced and expect to be welcomed? That's not how this works." I know I don't deserve anything, but I've changed. I've done the work. I've been clean for 2 years. I have a job. I have a home. I'm not the person I was." "People can change," Caleb said, "but trust takes time, and you don't get to walk back into their lives and expect them to forget what you did. That's not how healing works." Emily stood behind him, her arms wrapped around herself. She watched her mother's face, saw the desperation, the guilt, the genuine pain. She had imagined this moment so many times. She had dreamed of confronting her mother, of screaming at her, of making her feel even a fraction of the hurt she had caused. But now that it was happening, she felt hollow. The anger was there, but it was tangled up with something else. Something that felt like the ghost of love. "I want to talk to her," Emily said. Caleb turned. "Emily, you don't have to." "I know, but I want to. Alone." He looked at her for a long moment, searching her face. Then he nodded. He walked back to the porch, but he did not go inside. He stood there, watching, ready. Emily walked toward her mother. They stood a few feet apart, the cold wind blowing between them. "I don't forgive you," Emily said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't know." Her mother nodded, wiping her eyes. "I understand. But I'll listen. I'll hear what you have to say, and then you're going to leave, and I'm going to think about it. And if I decide I want to see you again, I'll tell you. But it's not going to be fast, and it's not going to be easy." "I know. I'll wait as long as it takes." Emily looked at the woman who had given her life and then walked away from it. She did not feel the rage she had expected. She felt something closer to exhaustion. "You left us," she said again, quieter this time. "You left us, and I had to raise her. I had to be her mother. And I did it. I did it because I loved her more than I was afraid. And I'm not going to let you take that away from me. I'm not going to let you pretend you can come back and fix everything with an apology. I'm not trying to take anything away. I'm trying to earn a place, a small one, however small you'll let me have." Emily looked at her hands. The calluses from ranch work, the scars from a childhood that had never been fair. She thought about Lily, safe inside the house, with a father who had chosen them. She thought about Caleb, standing on the porch, ready to protect her. "I have a family now," Emily said. "A real one. A father who chose me. A sister who depends on me. A home that's mine. You don't get to be part of that unless I say so, and I haven't decided if I want you to be." Her mother nodded. "I understand." Emily turned and walked back to the house. She passed Caleb on the porch, and he put his hand on her shoulder, and she leaned into it for just a moment before going inside. Lily was waiting in the kitchen, her face pale, button clutched to her chest. "Emmy, who was that lady?" Emily sat down and pulled her sister onto her lap. "That was our mother, Lily. The one who had us before we went to live with Dad." Lily's eyes widened. "Our real mother?" "Yes." "Is she coming back?" Emily held her close. "I don't know, maybe. But it doesn't matter. She's not our family anymore. We are. You, me, and Dad. That's our family." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Okay." Emily pressed her face against Lily's hair and closed her eyes. She heard Caleb come in, heard the door close behind him. She heard him stop in the doorway and stand there, not saying anything, just being present. She opened her eyes and looked at him. "I told her she had to leave." "I know. I don't know if I did the right thing." He crossed the room and knelt in front of her, so he was at eye level. "You did the right thing," he said. "Whatever you decide, it's the right thing, because it's your decision. She doesn't get to take that from you either." Emily looked at him. She thought about all the adults who had made decisions for her, who had shuffled her from place to place, who had treated her like a package to be processed. And now, for the first time, she was the one deciding. "I might want to see her again," she said. "Eventually, I don't know. Then we'll figure out how to do that in a way that's safe for you, in a way that you control." "You're not mad?" He shook his head. "I'm not mad. I'm proud of you. You walked through something hard tonight, and you kept your head. That's more than a lot of adults can do." Emily felt the tears coming, and she did not stop them. She let them fall, silent and warm, onto Lily's hair. She had a father. She had a sister. She had a home. And she had the power to decide who else got to be part of that. Outside, the headlights of her mother's car swept across the yard, and then the engine started, and the lights disappeared down the county road. Emily did not watch them go. She was where she needed to be. The winter that followed the visit from Emily's mother was the coldest in a decade, but the ranch held. The cattle made it through, the pipes did not freeze, and the woodpile stayed high enough to keep the fire burning day and night. Emily learned to layer her clothes and walk on ice without falling. She learned to break the ice in the water troughs with the back of an axe, the shock of cold water splashing her boots, and she learned to appreciate the warmth of the kitchen when she came inside, the smell of coffee and wood smoke clinging to her coat. She did not tell Lily about the letters. They came once a week, every Monday, in envelopes with no return address, but a postmark from a town 2 counties over. Emily recognized the handwriting before she opened the first one. Looping, uneven, the handwriting of someone who had not written much in a long time. She read it in her room, alone, while Lily played in the living room with Button and the rabbit. The letters were short at first: apologies, explanations, stories about the program her mother had completed, the steps she had taken, the meetings she attended. She did not ask for forgiveness. She did not demand a response. She just wrote, week after week, and Emily read each one and put them in a shoebox under her bed. She did not tell Caleb about the letters for 3 weeks. When she finally did, she brought the shoebox to the kitchen table and opened it in front of him. He looked at the stack of envelopes, then at her. "You've been reading these?" "Yes." "Do you want to write back?" Emily considered the question. "I don't know yet." "That's fair. She says she's changed. She says she's been sober for 2 years and 4 months now. She has a job at a diner. She lives in a small apartment. She goes to meetings every day." Caleb listened. He did not interrupt. "I don't know if I believe her," Emily said. "I want to. Part of me wants to, but I don't know if I can." "You don't have to decide anything right now. You can keep reading the letters. You can stop. You can write back when you're ready. Or you can never write back. It's your choice." She looked at the letters. 11 of them now, filled with words she had waited 5 years to hear. "I think I want to meet her again," Emily said. "But not alone, and not here, somewhere neutral, and I want you there." Caleb nodded. "We can do that." They arranged it for a Saturday in March, when the snow had melted and the first green shoots were pushing through the mud. They met at a diner halfway between the ranch and the town where her mother lived. Emily wore her best dress, the blue one, and she sat in the booth with Caleb beside her and Lily on her other side. She had told Lily about the meeting, explained that the woman who had come to the ranch was their birth mother, and that she wanted to try to be part of their lives. Lily had asked if that meant they would have to leave Dad. Emily had said no, absolutely not, and Lily had accepted that. Her mother was early. She was sitting in a booth near the window when they arrived, a cup of coffee in front of her, her hands wrapped around it like she was cold. She stood when they walked in, and she looked at them with an expression that was equal parts hope and fear. Emily slid into the booth across from her. Lily sat next to Emily, and Caleb took the chair at the end, close enough to intervene but far enough to give them space. "Thank you for coming," her mother said. Her voice was shaky. "Thank you for writing," Emily said. They talked for an hour. Her mother told them about her recovery, about the steps she had taken, about the shame she carried. She did not make excuses. She did not blame anyone else. She owned what she had done, fully and without qualification. Emily listened, and she asked questions, and she watched her mother's face for signs of deception. She did not find any. At the end of the hour, Emily said, "I'm not ready to call you Mom. I don't know if I ever will be, but I'm willing to try. Slowly, with boundaries." Her mother nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Whatever you need, whatever pace you need, I'll be here." They left the diner with an agreement. Letters would continue. Phone calls might come next. A visit to the ranch in the summer, if Emily felt ready. Small steps, each one controlled by Emily. In the truck on the way home, Lily said, "She seemed nice." "She seems different," Emily said. "Are we going to see her again?" "Maybe. In the summer." "If I decide I want to." Lily thought about this. "Okay, but Dad is still our dad, right?" Caleb looked in the rearview mirror. "I'm still your dad. Nothing changes that." "Good," Lily said, and she went back to talking to Button. Emily watched the land go by. She did not know what the future held with her mother. She did not know if trust could be rebuilt, or if it would always be fragile. But she knew that she was the one holding the reins now, and that was enough. Spring came with a flood of green. The creek overflowed its banks, and the pastures turned lush and thick. Emily spent her days outside, working alongside Caleb, learning the rhythms of the land. She was 13 now, tall and lean, with sun-streaked hair and hands that knew the weight of a hammer and the feel of a bridle. The summer brought the visit from her mother. It was tentative, awkward, full of silences that stretched too long and conversations that stumbled over themselves. But it happened. Her mother came to the ranch, sat on the porch, watched Lily play in the yard. She helped with dinner and did the dishes without being asked. She stayed for 3 hours and left before sunset, respecting the boundary Emily had set. It was not a reunion, it was not a healing, it was a beginning. Earl came by more often as the summer wore on. He helped with the haying, his old body moving slower than it used to but still capable. He taught Emily how to sharpen a blade and how to read the sky for weather. He told her stories about Clara as a girl, about the mischief she had caused, about the way she had loved this land with a fierceness that had passed into her daughter. One evening in late August, Emily sat on the porch with Earl, watching the sun set behind the ridge. "You know," he said, "when Clara died, I thought I lost everything. I thought there was nothing left. And then Caleb found you, and he found Lily, and I watched him come back to life. I watched him become the man he was before she died. That's because of you." Emily looked at her hands. "I don't know about that." "I do. I've known Caleb for 20 years. I saw him after the accident. I saw what he became, and I see him now. You gave him back his future." She did not know what to say. So she just sat with him, watching the sky turn orange and pink, letting the words settle. The fall brought Lily's first day of kindergarten. Emily walked her to the bus stop, holding her hand, button tucked into Lily's backpack. Lily was nervous, chattering about whether the other children would like her, whether the teacher would be nice, whether there would be snacks. "You'll be fine," Emily said. "You're the bravest person I know." Lily looked up at her. "Braver than you?" "Different kind of brave. You're brave in ways I never was." The bus came. Lily climbed on, turned to wave, and then disappeared into the yellow rectangle of light. Emily stood at the bus stop until the bus was out of sight, and then she walked back to the ranch. Caleb was in the barn. He looked up when she came in. "She get on okay?" "Yeah, she was nervous, but she did it." "She got that from you." Emily shook her head. "She got it from herself. She's always been the brave one." Caleb leaned on the pitchfork. "You don't give yourself enough credit. You were 8 years old and you raised a baby. You kept her alive. You kept her whole." "That's not nothing." Emily looked at the dust motes floating in the barn light. "I did what I had to do. That's what bravery is. Doing what you have to do, even when you're terrified." She thought about that. She thought about the placement fair, about the storm, about the courtroom. She thought about all the moments when she had been so scared she could barely breathe, and she had kept moving anyway. "I guess so," she said. He nodded. "I guess so." The first snow of winter came in December, a soft blanket that covered the ranch in white. They put up a tree again, this time with more decorations, more paper stars, more memories. Earl came for Christmas dinner, bringing a ham and a pie and a small gift for each of the girls. Emily's mother sent a card, which Emily opened and read and placed on the mantel. The adoption had been finalized for 6 months now. Emily had stopped counting the days. She had stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. She had stopped holding her breath. One night in January, when the wind was howling outside and the fire was crackling in the stove, Emily found Caleb in the living room, looking at the photograph of Clara and James. He did not look sad. He looked at peace. "I think about them every day," he said, not turning around. "But it doesn't hurt the same way anymore. It's more like gratitude, that I had them at all." Emily came and stood beside him. "I'm glad you had them too. They would have loved you. Clara would have adored you. She would have seen in you exactly what I see." "What's that?" He turned to look at her. "Someone who never gave up. Someone who loved so hard it scared her. Someone who deserves every good thing that comes her way." Emily felt the tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. "You deserve good things too," she said. "I think I'm starting to believe that." The wind rattled the windows, and the fire popped, and the house held them safe inside its walls. The spring of Emily's 14th year brought a letter from her mother, written in careful handwriting, asking if she could come for a longer visit. A weekend, a chance to really talk. Emily read the letter 3 times, then set it on the table and thought about it for 2 days. On the 3rd day, she wrote back. A single sentence. Yes, the 3rd weekend in April. She sealed the envelope and handed it to Caleb to mail. He took it without comment, and that was that. The visit came and went. It was not perfect. There were awkward silences, moments when Emily felt the old anger rise, moments when she had to excuse herself and walk outside to breathe. But there were also moments of something else, Moments when her mother laughed at something Lily said, or helped with the dishes without being asked, or sat quietly on the porch and watched the sunset. It was not a family, not yet, but it was the seed of something. That summer, Caleb taught Emily to drive the truck. They spent hours on the back roads, her hands gripping the wheel, him patient and calm beside her. She stalled twice, ran over a fence post, and nearly backed into the creek. He never raised his voice. By the end of the summer, she could drive the property line without incident. Lily started first grade, reading already, leaving Emily behind in the way younger siblings do. She was still small, still fierce, still carrying Button everywhere she went. But she was growing, becoming her own person, separate from the story that had defined their early years. Emily watched her sister and felt a pride so deep it ached. The fall of Emily's 14th year brought a letter from the county. Not from Vance, but from the Department of Records, informing her that her file had been closed. She was no longer a ward of the state. She was a Dawson, fully and permanently. She held the letter in her hands and read it 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in her journal, between the pages where she had written the story of her life. One evening in October, Emily and Caleb sat on the porch as the sun went down. The cattle were grazing in the distance, the horses were in the paddock, and Lily was inside, drawing pictures at the kitchen table. The air was cool and smelled of dry leaves and wood smoke. "Dad?" Emily said. Caleb turned. It was the first time she had called him that directly. His eyes went a little wide, and then they softened in a way she had never seen before. "Yeah? Thank you." He did not ask for what. He just nodded, and he put his arm around her shoulders, and they sat together on the porch of the house that had become their home, watching the stars come out one by one. And Emily thought about the long road that had brought her here, the nights of hunger and fear, the group homes and the placement fairs, the storm and the barn, the courtroom and the judge, the letters and the visits, the slow, patient work of becoming a family. She thought about her mother, who was trying. She thought about Earl, who had come back from grief. She thought about the town, which had learned to see them not as strangers, but as neighbors. Most of all, she thought about the man beside her, who had walked into a crowded pavilion and said, "I'll take them both," without knowing what he was getting into, who had built a home out of loss and love and stubborn, unyielding hope. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and she let the peace of the evening wash over her. The frontier was a hard place. It took people and broke them. It swallowed dreams and buried families under the weight of its vast, indifferent sky. But it also gave second chances. It gave wide-open spaces for hearts to heal. It gave lonely people a reason to keep going. And sometimes, if you were lucky, it gave you a family you never expected. This is Clint Dawson, and you've been listening to Frontier Heart Audio. Until next time, keep your heart open and your trails safe.